morning and welcome to Thursday's program. Hey, that's not Mike Farwell, but the voice is vaguely familiar, isn't it? I hope so. It's Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell for today, tomorrow, and next week. And you know, when I fill in for Mike Farwell, and I've done this for a couple of years now, that here and there, filling in for Mike, and it's under different circumstances. Couple of times, very rarely, he's been under the weather. There was, times when he's on vacation. I think he does take vacation sometimes, and although he works a lot. And then there's the optimum situation when Mike is on the road with the Kitchener Rangers, and the distance and times prohibit him from also doing his show, plus calling the Ranger game. So this is the best possible circumstance to be filling in for Mike Farwell, and the fact that Mike Farwell is on the road with the Rangers, and of course, as we know, none of this is news, of course, but it's worth repeating. He's on the road with the Rangers for the Memorial Cup. Isn't this terrific? I mean, of course it is. It's the eve of the Memorial Cup, if you will. The Rangers' first game tomorrow is the start of the Memorial Cup, and they're playing the host city, the Kelowna Rockets. So it's way out there. It's way out there in the hinterland of British Columbia, in fruit and wine country, the beautiful Kelowna, British Columbia. And the Rockets, who, by the way, did make the playoffs in the WHL this year. They were knocked out in the first round by Everett, who's actually won the WHL and is in the playoffs. And we're playing them on Tuesday, I believe. So nevertheless, it's the eve, and go Rangers go, but never discount the host team. I looked this up, so just to full disclosure that I'm getting a little AI help on this information here, but the format of three teams, so the winner of the OHL, the Q, and the WHL, and then the host city team gets a bye into the Memorial Cup tournament. So there's four teams. This format has been around since 1983, so about 43 years. So in those 40 plus years, the host city has actually won the Memorial Cup 11 times. So never discount the host city. Now, theoretically, the host city who gets a bye into the cup should not be a serious contender, except for a couple of things. One, they often are, and two, just the level of hockey across these three major junior leagues is such that there's really no dogs, if you will. When it comes to the Memorial Cup, everybody's a contender, and based on 11 different incidences, it is very easy for or it's not uncommon, shall I say, for the host city to win the cup. So all I'm saying is, every game is important. We should not take game one for granted just because it's the host city, and just good feelings though, and high hopes for the Kitchener Rangers. Speaking of which, our special guest this morning at 11:30 on the Mike Farwell Show will be Mike Farwell. So Mike is a couple of times that I've hosted for Mike, and we have Mike on. It's always kind of fun to have Mike guesting on his own show, but he is coming on at 11:30 this morning from Kelowna, and we're going to talk about basically the tournament. So as you may know, four teams. Each team plays each other once, and the team with the most points at the end of that gets a bye into the final game, the championship game. And then the second and third team, if there's a tie, there's a tiebreaker date available, and then after that, teams 2 and 3 play off for the right to play the first place team, and then that's called the Memorial Cup, and we'll win that. So it's exciting times. It's always post season, to be in the postseason, and then to have this Memorial Cup playoff, which I always think is interesting, because when you get into, for example, the NHL playoffs, which are also very exciting, and way to go Montreal, and they're playing tonight, and it's all good, but the NHL, you play a team for up to 7 games. That's it, and it's a team you've played before, likely during the season, and you meet them again, and you play them for a series, and you try and win 4 games. This is much different because, and what I enjoy about Memorial Cup always, and always have, is that these teams don't play each other. We don't travel to Washington to play Everett. During there's no interleague play in the major juniors. Although that would be interesting, wouldn't it? But nevertheless, so you see these teams, you're playing these teams for the first time, and you're not playing the same team in a series, a best of 7 or whatever, best of 5. You're not. You're playing 3 different teams, and then you go from there. But I enjoy that format. So first game, as I said, tomorrow night, and we're on the eve of Memorial Cup for the Rangers. Mike Farwell here at 11:30, and then interestingly, and I want to ask Mike about this too, is that we play tomorrow night, and then we have Saturday and Sunday off, and then we play Monday, Tuesday. So I don't know how I feel about that. Playing, I don't know quite how that is decided, or if some team is going to have that kind of thing where they're going to play and then have 2 days off and then play back to back. And yeah, okay, but something to think about as well. Anyway, great to be filling in for Mike Farwell. And as I said, under the circumstances at this time of year in late May, being on the road with the Rangers for the Memorial Cup. It's fantastic. Here's Mary calling the show early. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Larry. Larry?
Yes.
I'm so happy to hear you.
Well, thank you. It's been a while. I'm glad. Great to be back.
And you know what? I was worried about you because you haven't been on for a while. You and me, we're getting up there, and we never know, right? But anyway, I'm so happy you're well and able to do the show, and it's nice having a live person. And have a good week, Larry.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. Thank you very much. I am on. I should have asked Mary, if she's on social, because I'm on there pretty much. I'm on the old folks social, Facebook. I'm on X and Blue Sky, and I'm there. I post something probably almost every day. So if you ever wonder, is Larry still around? And I guess Mary is sadly correct in that as you get up there a little bit, you go, well, I wonder if you don't hear from somebody, it's time to check in, like what happened. But yes, here and as I said earlier, feeling like $100. So feeling good. Hey, Doug, go ahead. You're on the Mike Farwell show.
Good morning, Larry.
Hey, Doug.
Or should I say we have a recurring TV show here. Hello, Larry.
Hello, Larry. Boy, when that show was out, did I get that? I got that a lot when that show was out. Yeah.
The reason I called in, I wonder, you can ask Mike to confirm this or deny it one way or the other when he calls in, because I'm on the road, I'll be out of range then, but I'm pretty sure that for a short while they did toy with some interleague play between the Q and the O. I distinctly remember games going on like that, but I think they did away with it because I think it would probably be cost prohibitive for some of the teams, especially Windsor. But yeah. And of course the one that there's 2 teams that do play each other, and that's your host in the league championship. That's the way it is every year. The league champion, of course, goes to the Memorial Cup, and there's the host. And if the host doesn't, the host wins, then the other finalist actually is going to go in too. But so obviously Everett and Kelowna did play during the regular season. I wonder if you got any clue what the score was in the series between those two.
In the playoff series between Kelowna and Everett, first round. Yeah, I don't. Sorry.
Okay, I wonder what it might have been, because I know Everett dispatched Prince Albert 4-1, and they look pretty good doing it. But anyway, I asked Mike about the interleague play. I'm sure they toyed with it a little bit. And anyway, I've always I'm on here every day. I'm listening, so you're filling in really well. Doing a good job, Larry. Talk to you later.
Hey,
have a good one.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that, Doug. Thanks so much. It's actually, so I've told the story before, but not even a story, but just this factoid. I'm an Ontarian. I mean, I've been here over 40 years, and it's home. But I was born in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. So when I noticed that the Raiders were, for Saskatchewan, major junior hockey is the only game, really, hockey game. I mean, they still love their CFL out there, but it's a big deal because it's their ultimate hockey is the juniors. So to hear the Raiders name, which I really haven't heard for years, and suddenly I hear, oh, the Raiders are in against Everett. Okay, go Raiders. I was kind of cheering for Prince Albert, but it wasn't to be by any means, not even close. So, and it's interesting, Doug, that you mention, I'll ask Mike because I don't know, Mike would know, but it makes sense that they would at least discuss interleague play between the OHL and the QMJHL, the Q, because of, I guess, proximity. I mean, I guess, yeah, some, and the reason I brought up Prince Albert is in the Western Hockey League, I mean, at times, I guess Prince Albert would have to travel to Everett or Spokane, or there's 6 American teams in the WHL. There's only 2 American teams in the OHL. There's 6 in the WHL, and I believe they're all Washington. Portland, of course, the famous Portland team is there. But so Washington, Oregon, and for a Prince Albert to travel all the way to even British Columbia teams, never mind dipping into Washington State. That's a distance, I mean, when the Rangers have to go to Saginaw or Flint, or all the way up to the Sioux or something, those are usually times when, because of the travel and all that, it's usually times when I come in when Mike's away, just because of the time and the travel. So it's difficult for Mike to do the games and do his show at 9 o'clock in the morning as well for 4 hours. So my point, I guess, on the travel between the OHL and the Q would be that, yeah, it'd be a distance, but, you look at the Western Hockey League, some of those teams really travel a lot during the season. But then again, too, you go back to when I was a kid and, cheering on the Raiders, and I think my cousin, seem to recall this, played goal for the Raiders, or he was about to be drafted by the Raiders or something like that. Maybe he was a level below the Raiders and he was going to play goal for the Raiders. And so anyway, it was the talk, and all my dad's brothers were from Prince Albert, then that's where sort of the headquarters of my dad's side of the family for many, many years. And so it was a big deal to go to Prince Albert. It was, a city. We lived in a little dinky town, and you go to the city and, factoid, not too many cities are known by initials. L.A., P.A., NYC, the big ones, are known just by their initials, Prince Albert. But from when I would remember the Raiders and other junior hockey teams that were the teams in like Prince Albert, Saskatoon, Moose Jaw, so on and so forth that you remembered as a kid, what major junior hockey is now compared to then is really night and day. I mean, it's grown into and especially if you look at OHL, only I think because of sheer population and audience availability. In other words, just so the arenas and are bigger and more people come to the games just because of sheer population. But the franchises that are Kitchener and London and some big Ontario centers are major dollar franchises, right? Niagara, there's a few of those are pretty big franchises when you consider it's kids playing hockey. And I'm sure you've probably had this experience going to events not just the games, but events in Kitchener where some Rangers players might show up. Because, I mean, I worked in Niagara for a number of years on radio there, and we'd have we were the voice of the Ice Dogs, our station was, and we would have players come in, and some of these players, and of course my age has something to do with that, I admit this, but you look at these players and you go, these are kids. These are kids. My gosh, because some of them are still in like 16, 17, and they are obviously athletes, so they're very fit and fresh-faced and kids. It was always interesting to me too to look at like a 16-year-old kid who's like the star of the junior team, and like, in a couple of years you're going to be a millionaire and you will come back and buy and sell me 10 times over if you want. It doesn't matter. Like, not everybody makes it and not everybody gets the big contracts, I know, but man, a lot of these guys were like, you look at them as kids and you go, wow, your future's pretty bright. It's pretty interesting to see when you see them up close, to see how young they are. And of course, playing hockey since what, probably 4, 5, 3, they've been probably stars of their various hockey teams through their lives since they were little kids. And now here they are, living away from home, playing in a high pressure league. And it's interesting. And I think too, it makes it special. Now you can talk about how much junior players get and what they should get and that's a different topic for another day. I don't want to, ruin the good sports moment with the blah, blah, blah about all the issues. But what makes it special, and why I think always people love semi-pro baseball and high school football and even junior hockey, which is, I'm not comparing it to high school sports. I'm just saying, a league that's not the big professional league. It's a tier down or even 2 tiers down. I think people enjoy it because of just the pure sport of it. What's at stake is not the big contracts or the endorsements or anything. It's the game. It's the game, and it's a community game when it's major, junior, because generally in smaller communities, not small, but smaller communities, so communities get behind their team and they love their team and all this, it is fantastic. And it's great. And it's great to be in postseason in, whatever sport you like, to kind of, so much has to go right for you and not quite go right for the other team for you to get to this point. You can say, well, skill and coaching and determination and grit. And yeah, everybody's got that pretty much, right? Maybe one coach has an edge, or this player's just a little faster than the other guy, whatever. But everybody's got that. So when you take that and sort of add to the stew, to the mix, you add everything else and go, boy, what has to go right for a team to actually make it? You could look back at the Rangers and say, we had a better team 5 years ago or 10 or whatever you want to say. You say, why didn't we make it then? Circumstances, stuff happens, a bounce here and there, and it's all different. And so just appreciating the fact that how much, as I said, had to go right for us to be here in this particular time in the postseason. Very exciting. Mike Farwell is away. I'm Larry Fedoruk. Mike Farwell, a guest on his own show at 11:30 this morning, will pick up the conversation of the Rangers and the Memorial Cup when Mike joins us at 11:30. And probably, we'll throw it in here and there throughout the show because it's a big deal. It's a big time. We have all kinds of other things to talk about on the show today, too. I'll outline some of those when we come back here on 570 News Radio. I'm Larry Fedoruk, sitting in for Mike Farwell today. Mike in Kelowna where he should be at this point, with the Rangers, and joining us at 11:30, Mike Farwell, to talk about the Rangers Memorial Cup tournament and all the stuff. And if you're just joining us, Mary called at the beginning of the show because I fill in for Mike Farwell occasionally, and it's been a while. So Mary called, very nice call. She said, you know, great to hear you again. That was nice to hear. Thank you, Mary. And Mary said it's great to have a live person on the show. So I was thinking about that after Mary called, and I was like, that's going to be my job. That'll be my goal today. I'm going to do my best to be a live person. See, this is the bar I've set for myself today. Be a live person. And you know, there's this thing too, and I don't know if it's like this in any other job, but in radio, when you had to fill in for somebody, it was like the best gig, because they were thrilled with you for showing up. Basically, that was the big thing. We got to fill in, guy. Is he here? Yeah. Oh, good. Oh. So they were just so happy you showed up. There's no pressure after that, really, because you showed up. So, and that's, hey, isn't that a big part of life in general? Just being there, showing up. You got to show up. You be there. You know. Be there for your partner. Be there for your kids. Be there. I showed up. Were you there? Were you enjoying? I was there. I showed up. Okay. Hey, thanks for showing up. Thanks for being there thanks for coming to the wedding. Oh yeah, I showed up. Yeah. So I showed up. I'm showing up today and tomorrow and next week, as well as the tournament gets into full speed next week, Memorial Cup tournament. But as I said, we're on the eve. Rangers' first game tomorrow night, as you know. And, of course, all the coverage of the games in the Cup here on 570 News Radio. Other things we're talking about coming up just after 9:30. We're going to be joined. You may have heard this story of Chantel Hunick, regional councillor. She gets around by motorized wheelchair. She also has some visual impairment. And she had to go to a meeting in a conference for a couple meetings, I guess, in Etobicoke and Mississauga. So she had to get to that meeting and then get from Etobicoke to Mississauga, another meeting. And at one point, boy, I hope she gets into the details of this story, because she had to call an accessible taxi. And the runaround she got is just to hear the story and the sort of the catch-22s and that she went through. She ended up waiting hours and hours for an accessible taxi, to the point where Mississauga City is investigating because of the wait and just bringing up the issue of accessible taxis and the issues surrounding them. So Chantel is going to join us just after 9:30, and we'll hear her story and talk more about that particular issue. At 10 o'clock this morning, we're going to talk to Michael Pavlin. He is a professor in AI at Wilfrid Laurier, and we're going to talk about the fact that school boards in the region are allowing kids as young as grade 6 and 7 to use AI in the day-to-day, which is like, are you, what? And he has some trepidations, which I think many of us do about AI. So he's going to join us to talk about that. What else this morning? We'll talk. Speaking of, we're going to talk about some AI high schoolers who came up with an AI program to help people in hospital waiting rooms. So the not so good side of AI and the good side of AI. We'll talk about both of those things this morning. But Chantel and her story coming up next here on 570 News Radio. I want to talk about that Colbert last show. Maybe we can do that on our 12 o'clock Talkback Hour if you have any thoughts about that. People say, are you going to be watching? I always say, yeah, I'll watch the clips. It's usually what happens now with everything, right? Going to be watching the Oscars? No, I'll watch the clips the next day. You know, it's like outside of sports, pretty much any other special event is like, I'll watch the clips. I don't know if I'm up at 11:30, I might watch. We'll see. We shall see. More on that later. Coming up at 10 o'clock this morning, we're going to talk about AI and this approval of school boards in the region where kids in even grade 6 and 7 are allowed basically to use AI in their daily school work and reports and essays and things, is bringing criticism. And we have a professor in AI from Wilfrid Laurier is going to join us at 10 o'clock to voice his concerns about about AI for young people and this idea that, yeah, go ahead and use it in school. On the other hand, they're probably going to be using it anyway somewhere. So is the fact that we just give them permission better or worse? We'll talk about that at 10 o'clock this morning. Right now on the show, what a frustrating story. Regional councillor, Waterloo councillor, had to go to Etobicoke, Mississauga for a couple of meetings, and this councillor gets around by motorized wheelchair, has some visual impairment as well, and therefore, to get from meeting to meeting out there, would need an accessible taxi. And that's when the frustrating part of the story begins. Oh my goodness, frustrating is hardly the word I would use, but the one I'm going to use on radio. Joining us to talk about this experience is Regional Councillor Chantel Hunink. Councillor Hunink, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Larry. Thank you for having me.
This happened, I believe, mid-April that you had to go to Etobicoke, Mississauga, is that correct?
Yeah, it was April 13th and April 15th, I believe.
So tell us what happened, because you go and you try and plan everything out ahead of time because you realize that you can't just hop in a cab like other people, whatever you have to do this. You planned ahead, or at least you thought, right?
Yeah, so I know that accessible services are in high demand everywhere. And so I did my best to start booking the 2 rides that I needed 5 days in advance. And each of the 3 companies that I contacted told me that I needed to book the day of. And call an hour in advance and hope that there would be a taxi available. I knew that wasn't going to be feasible for me, at least for the first time. So I called the accessibility representative of Toronto, who was able to coordinate one of the rides for me, but unfortunately, the second one was beyond her jurisdiction, she said, which led to me calling 4 more companies, and essentially, even though I gave them 7 days notice, I ended up waiting 3 hours after the time that I needed a taxi because there was none available at all.
So, but yet they told you when you tried to book ahead, they said, no, you got to call an hour ahead. And like you probably only had an hour or so to get from meeting to meeting.
Right. And that's why I'm working with the city of Mississauga to figure this out. Because if the policy is that you can only book an hour in advance, then there needs to be rides available an hour in advance. And if there's not, then you need to be able to book earlier than that to ensure safety and reliability.
Now, the other part I'm interested in here, Chantel, is did a company or was it more than one that said there was a surcharge if you wanted prompt service?
One of the companies alluded to a $20 surcharge because I needed an accessible vehicle, and another one mentioned it explicitly. And when I noticed that was against the Ontarians Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, they hung up on me.
All right. So it's basically what they're doing is against the law. They can't charge a surcharge.
Yes. And to Mississauga bylaws credit, they are aware of that, and they are following up with all of the companies listed in my experience.
So I don't want to say it's a good thing, but at least sort of on the positive side, your frustrations at least got the attention of the city of Mississauga, and they are willing to investigate and see what happened here, right?
Yes, and that's why I did it. Larry, I know that there are people in Mississauga just like me who need taxis just like me, and they should be able to rely on them. And so I try to use my platform for the benefit of more people. I will say that accessible taxis are a resource that is hard to come by everywhere, and I'm really, really proud of the region of Waterloo and Waterloo Regional Council for working with the taxi companies to ensure that we have granting programs to outfit accessible vans and even premiums to cover or to at least provide incentives to accessible taxi drivers when they're picking up at difficult times, such as the middle of the night. So, and that's, I think, why a significant reason why accessible taxi services have improved so much in Waterloo region over the last 3 years in particular.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, and thank you for sharing that, because you had this experience in Mississauga, and they're going to hopefully address some of the issues now because of you sharing the experience and using your platform. But I wondered about the experience in the region, your sort of day-to-day, week-to-week. I'm hoping is a little more positive in the region.
Post-COVID, there was a bit of challenges because a lot of the vans had gone off the road for a number of years. But as I said, we've worked with the Taxi Licensing and Hearing Committee and the taxi companies and the brokers themselves to ensure that accessible taxi services in Waterloo region are growing as fast as we can grow them.
And I think you touched on this, how subsidies are needed, because it is much more expensive to buy and operate an accessible taxi than it is a normal car, or not normal, sorry, bad word, but just a regular, a car as opposed to a van and a ramp and everything.
A less accessible vehicle. I understand what you're saying. That's true, and it's really important to note that it's critical because services like Uber and Lyft and other rideshare programs are not mandated to provide accessible services, and they really should be, because it's limiting the options for people with disabilities. But for that reason, I'm extremely thankful for the accessible taxis that we have in Waterloo region.
A friend of mine in a motorized wheelchair used to have what she told me was her traveling wheelchair, which is just a very simple fold-up chair that for family vehicles, they could fold up this chair, put it in a trunk or whatever, and then people would have to kind of push her around wherever they went. These were family situations. But that's not really an option in your day-to-day. You need it's a motorized chair. You can't just fold it up in the trunk of a car, right?
Well, I hear what you're saying, Larry, and how I deal with my family situations is far different than how I want to deal with a situation where I'm representing the region of Waterloo at a conference, right?
Sure.
Travel wheelchairs are wonderful. They make things possible that otherwise wouldn't be possible, but they're often not outfitted to the same degree or providing the same physical stability that I would need to speak on behalf of the region of Waterloo and speak well on behalf of the region of Waterloo.
Just on a separate note, just out of the blue, how do you find transit? Did you do transit at all, and is it okay?
In Waterloo region, I rely on transit exclusively. That's a combination of conventional transit and our specialized Mobility Plus services. If I didn't have them, I literally wouldn't be able to go anywhere in our region. In my opinion, there's always more that we can do, but they're improving steadily with people like myself and the other advocates in the region, working with regional staff to make sure they are becoming as good as they can be.
All right, so just kind of to recap, in Mississauga, they're looking at the wait times, they're looking at the availability, they're going to get rid of this, or hopefully reprimand people who are demanding a surcharge. But in generally, you have some recommends. I mean, making sure, I guess, that accessible taxis are maybe subsidized or get some help would be a good idea?
Yes, grants for outfitting accessible vehicles and providing incentives for times when it's difficult to get drivers. I think what people need to know is that if someone doesn't have reliable transportation services, whether they're public transit or taxi or some other form of friendly mobility, then it's not possible for them to get around, and it's not possible for them to have impact or voice in the community the same way that it would be possible if they could get where they need to get and do what they need to do. And so that's why equitable transit is really, really important to me. And I really do see the connection between accessible transportation services and all of the other social determinants of health.
Right. Because, eventually people just don't go out. And that you don't want that,
Well, and if you're not seen and you're not heard, then you're not included in decision-making procedures. And that's how things like taxi services and other services in general can become less equitable than they should be. So everyone's voice needs to be heard, and everyone needs to be able to get where they want to go.
Well said, Chantel. Thank you for your time this morning, and thank you for voicing all of this and affecting some change, hopefully some positive change. Thank you, Chantel.
Thanks, Larry. Have a great day.
You too. Chantel Hunig is a regional councillor in Waterloo, and if you're just joining us, she had not a good experience, to say the least, going to meetings in Etobicoke and Mississauga for her job, and then not being able to get accessible taxis in between. Just a nightmare of a story, really, that she brought forward so that there could be some change. And Mississauga is looking now at that situation and trying to make it better there. And good to hear some at least complimentary remarks about accessibility in Kitchener-Waterloo region as well. That is good to hear. This is 570 News Radio. I'm Larry Fedoruk, sitting in for Mike Farwell. Back in a moment.
If someone doesn't have reliable transportation services, whether they're public transit or taxi, then it's not possible for them to get around, and it's not possible for them to have impact or voice in the community the same way that it would be possible if they could get where they need to get and do what they need to do. And so that's why equitable transit is really, really important to me.
Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. That was our guest moments ago, Chantel Hunig, Regional Councillor, Waterloo, who you may have seen the story, went to, back in mid-April, went to Etobicoke and Mississauga for conferences, and had to get from Etobicoke to Mississauga. And and of course, this is somebody who's been in a motorized wheelchair for some time, so knows her limitations, knows her abilities, knows to plan ahead. So it's so frustrating. You think about it in something that those of us who are not in wheelchairs take for granted probably a lot, but nevertheless, she, like 5 days ahead, phones and says, okay, this is my date. I'm going to be here in Etobicoke, and I'm going to need a taxi at this time to get to this meeting in Mississauga for this time. And so there's some good planning ahead, except in Mississauga and Etobicoke, they're like, no, you can't. You got to call about an hour ahead, and then we'll try and get a taxi over to you. So, geez, that's, so what do you have to leave your meeting at some point, or say, excuse me, I need to use my phone in the middle of a meeting because you got to call an hour ahead for a taxi, accessible taxi. So there's that. But then when she goes, yeah, okay, I'll call an hour ahead, and they go, yeah, couple hours, we don't have a taxi, and it's like, well, I called ahead, but you told me I couldn't call 5 days ahead, and I call an hour ahead, and I do what you told. So she calls the disabilities person in Toronto and says, well, here's what's happening to me. And the person says, well, don't worry, I'll help you. but I can't help you in Mississauga because that's not my jurisdiction. So then the Mississauga thing turns into a nightmare. And then a couple of services in Mississauga said, yeah, for $20 surcharge, we can help you out. And I'm like, well, that's actually against the law. She knew that, and she busted them on it, and they hung up on her. So it's I'm glad she brought her story forward to at least initiate change in Mississauga, where Mississauga could say that's not right. And of course, Chantel also continuing to be not only a regional councillor on all kinds of issues for her constituents, but certainly for constituents that have disabilities and need special services like accessible taxis. And there is a point of accessible taxis. The whole taxi industry, of course, as Chantel pointed out, is just upside down right now with ride-sharing services, which, by the way, work on, and I'm forgetting the term right now, but the dynamic pricing, I think, is one of the terms I'm thinking of, where Uber and Lyft, the taxis never really did because taxis were more regulated, but Uber and Lyft can say, well, you know, it's $30 from your place to downtown, except New Year's Eve. Oh, well, what is it, 50? No, it's 200 now. Like, it's just crazy that they can, and other people do this too. It's called dynamic pricing, where the more something is in demand, the more they charge for it, which kind of is the market, I guess, in one way, but not, you know, simple services that we should have. This is the price of something unless you really want it bad. Then we're going to triple and quadruple the price. It's ridiculous. So the taxi industry, my point, is crazy right now. To start a taxi or to join a taxi service, whatever, get this car and start driving around, and the car has a meter, and you have a debit credit card machine and all that, and pretty much you're on the road. Where accessible vans, especially ones that can hold motorized wheelchair plus maybe another passenger or two, because people in motorized wheelchairs don't travel alone always. They right. So to have a van that's has to be supported, and suspension wise and everything has to be good, and then the electric ramp and all that kind of stuff. There's not going to be a lot of those, just because of the demand. So I totally agree with Chantel and her point of there has to be some kind of incentive, subsidy, what have you, to get more accessible vans out there. If somebody says, okay, I'm going to drive a cab and I'm going to drive an accessible van, can you help me at least get to the point where I can afford this vehicle, or the changes that I might need to put into a vehicle to make it a full-fledged accessible taxi? You know, I always thought that I understood what people in wheelchairs went through, or that I was at least empathetic. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But until I worked with someone who's like every day, I worked with a person who's in a motorized wheelchair and began to talk to them about challenges they face that you never think of in day to day. And I know for the person I worked with, like, winter is just ridiculous. So they plow the sidewalks, but at the end of the sidewalk, there's a ridge of snow where the other street plow came through, and then the sidewalk plow didn't. So you and I just step over it. Wheelchair can't get through it. So I would see my friend in the winter coming to work. I'd look out the window, and she's getting off the bus, but she's traveling on the street. She's on, and there's no wheelchair lane. You know, there's bike lanes maybe, but and she's traveling just to be able to get, like, that's one little thing. There's all kinds of things that you learn and you try and get sensitive to. AI is our topic next hour in a couple of areas, both positive and not so positive. We'll do that next here on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host Larry Fedoruk.
And the special guest host is going to have a special guest coming up at 11:30 on the Mike Farwell Show. It will be Mike Farwell, live from Kelowna, this year's home of the Memorial Cup, starring the Kitchener Rangers. It is the eve. The game one of the Memorial Cup is tomorrow, where it's Kelowna and Kitchener. The KR against the KR. So that'll be tomorrow night. All the action, 570 News Radio, and Mike Farwell coming up at 11:30. This is a topic I love discussing. A lot of people have a lot of apprehension about artificial intelligence, AI, and what it might do and what the future is, and, on the road to the extinction of humanity and so on and so forth. There's all kinds of things you can talk about here. But some local school boards have said, all right, kids, and we're talking kids in some cases, grades 6 and 7, go ahead, you can use it. There are critics who are calling this reckless, including our guest, who's a professor in AI at Wilfrid Laurier University. Michael Pavlin is joining us. Hello, Professor Pavlin. How are you?
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming on. Why is it reckless? Now, I know that's a big question, but in other words, if they're going to use it anyway, what about introducing it in a controlled environment and saying, okay, try to teach it instead of just banning it or whatever?
Yeah. So first off, I'd like to say, I'm at the business school at Wilfrid Laurier, and we are struggling, with the same concerns that I think a lot of teachers in primary and high school are struggling with today, in terms of how to make sure that our students are using these technologies in a way that's facilitating and helping their learning, as opposed to subtracting from it, taking its place. In answer to your question there, I don't propose, a full ban. What I'd like to see are systems with guardrails that are purpose-built for the particular task that you're trying to learn, and that introduce AI technologies in a more gradual fashion.
Okay. And so what kind of guardrails really? You say, okay, introduce it in a gradual fashion, but how would that, how would I picture that?
Yeah. So first off, the way that these technologies have been introduced, it was a big surprise to me. So I have a student who's in high school in Kitchener, and on May 4th, I received an email that students, as part of the technology ecosystem, not as part of the classroom, not as part of a guided process by teachers, had access now to Gemini Chat and Notebook LM, which are two very powerful systems, effectively like ChatGPT. And the first thing I did was open up my daughter's. She let me open up her Google account and go to the and ask it to produce an essay, and that's the first thing it did. These aren't being introduced in the classroom; they're being put forward as and really, and as soon as you start putting them into that ecosystem, I think you're advocating for their use, and we really need to be careful that these tools are being used carefully.
Now, I haven't gone into some specific, at least on a regular basis, into some specific apps and services. But as an example, as a broadcaster and a writer, I'm researching, and I would Google something, and there would be the top 3, 4, 5 sites that I needed to click on and read and compose my piece. As in the old days, you go to the library with notes and find all the books. This I can do at home quickly. But now Google doesn't even do that. They just tell you. It's almost impossible not to use AI, in other words, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And again, so I'm not against AI. I use it every day in my work. I use it I'm back in the day was a software engineer, and I've seen it just completely revolutionize that field. There's it's incredible. Work where I would have spent all night doing in the past is now accomplished. I could have gotten done in 15 minutes. It's incredible the change in various fields. I use it also to do what you're saying there, to aggregate different information sources and pull them together and create research documents for my own consumption. These are specific uses, and I think even in my day-to-day life, I'm very careful about how I use AI, and that I make sure that I'm doing it in a way that it's not taking away too many tools or too many of my own facilities, because I've seen my ability to read a map and find my way around new cities has disappeared as I've used Google Maps. And I don't want to see the same thing happen to my critical thinking skills, and I don't want to see that happen to my children's critical thinking skills.
Well, there's the phrase that I wanted to get to: critical thinking. Mm-hmm. What's happened to it? I think we see changes already. Just with massive connectivity and internet, never mind now AI, we've seen a slip in critical thinking. And what is the danger of that?
Yeah. So I know right now we're sort of seeing we're in the middle of it, sort of the aftermath of the impact of social media, which is another story that I've been following very closely. We've still got ongoing litigation I think in the Toronto and Peel, if I'm not mistaken, school boards. So there's a lot going on there still, and I think we really dropped the ball on how we introduce those technologies. And now, as far as AI's use, there's a lot of the research is pretty consistent that if it is very easy to use these tools. There's some really good articles on using these tools, giving these tools to kids to help with essays, to help with math homework. And if you do it without guardrails, it impacts their learning and their ability to think critically.
That was the other part, is it was being introduced in grades 6 and 7. Now, maybe I'm naive here, but I think if you limit the use, and there was just a separate study today of Surgeon General in the US about screen times in kids and how much screen time they have, but which is part of this issue. But I guess my point is, if you limit it and maybe introduce it later in high school, grades 6 and 7 seems way too early to me. I mean, that's really just erasing critical thinking before it even starts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like university students are struggling with this, right? I last year went to a presentation by one of our student clubs on how them and their colleagues are struggling with this, and they're seeing some of their, not all students, but some students become dependent on these technologies to do all their assignments, and then when test time comes around, that usually doesn't end well. But it's something that is difficult, at that age of maturity, after having gone through high school, to think that an 11 or 12-year-old is going to have, the maturity to really constrain their use effectively is really hard for me to understand.
Well, one of the, in defense of it, was one of the things they said, which is something I do, but I'm an adult. I've been doing this a long time. But they said that when you use AI, make it your own. Don't just copy paste or whatever. Just read it, see what it says, try and make it your own. And I was like, okay, that's sounds good, but that's critical thinking. And now we're back. Yeah. If you're not developing those skills in the first place, where are you getting those skills if you're just using AI all the time?
Yeah, no, that's a great way of thinking about it. Yeah, so they have posted guidelines, and I believe there's an article, the Record article recently, that where the school board sort of pointed to these guidelines, and yeah, my response is, I prefer guardrails to guidelines, just like I don't know. Not everybody follows the speed limit. It's posted, but people generally stay on the road. If there's a guardrail in front of them. So I think those firm boundaries would be a lot more effective. And trusting someone who may not have fully developed critical thinking skills to be able to take those guidelines and apply them, effectively or even read them in the first place is something that I don't, we're not ready for yet. Anyways, we don't have I don't think the teachers ready
Well,
to do that.
this is the thing, and part of the reason I'm glad to hear voices like yours is it's just overwhelming. It's not that we didn't know, but it just seemed to come up so fast, and here it is. It's not coming. It's here. It's now. And what is it? People are confused. They're overwhelmed. They're frightened of it. I mean, we seem to be kind of stalled here, looking at this, not knowing what it's going to be.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a revolution. We'll see how far that revolution goes and how much it impacts society as a whole. Personally, I just want to look at these, or like to look at these smaller issues and make sure that where I can, make sure that it affects my family and my community as in my job in a way that's as positive as possible.
So AI can think, if I can use that term. Can it learn? Is that or are we there already, or is that the next step when it starts to think and learn for itself?
Yeah, I mean, these models are being trained over and over again on large basically all of the products of humanity, and it is as a system it's definitely learning and on an ongoing basis. I don't have all the secrets of what ChatGPT and what Anthropic is up to, but they're certainly these are very sophisticated systems that have a lot of capabilities and a lot of power. And we want to make sure that I think we really need to be at our best in order to be able to collaborate and stay in the loop. And that's where we need those critical thinking skills to be able to take the outputs of these complex systems and use it in a productive fashion, be able to make decisions, be able to participate in this new world we're all venturing into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I am reading now, and I shouldn't even bring it up because I'm so far from an expert, but I'm just overwhelmed by quantum computing, and where the regular computers think in a linear fashion in zeros and ones, whereas quantum computing is quantum mechanics, and they think all at once, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And what that is going to do for computers learning and thinking in AI is kind of blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, one thing at a time here, Larry.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. You're right. If I get through one doomsday before we get to the other.
That's right. That's right.
But so you just lastly here, you're a professor of AI, yet you're dealing with the challenges of it in learning itself. Kind of what are you trying to say, and what are you teaching in AI in this point?
Yeah, so as I say, I'm at the business school. I'm largely a consumer of the work of the computer scientists. I used to be a software engineer in my earlier days, and we teach AI courses, and we've been doing that for we introduced a course about 6 years ago that teaches AI to our Masters of Management Analytics students, some of our masters, graduate students. And what we're doing there is we're looking at how to apply these tools to make better decisions. Right now, we're sort of in the midst of really thinking hard and about how to adjust that curriculum because of just the changes that have taken place. So I'm spending a lot of time talking to people in industry and our alumni to try and better understand what the requirements of the workplace are going to be and how these tools are fitting into different industries. And,
Interesting. I'm tempted to say, so I'll just say it. Good luck with all that, because it is challenging right now. But I'm glad to see that you're on it and talking about it and getting the word out. Professor, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks very much, Larry.
Michael Pavlin is a professor in AI at Wilfrid Laurier University. We're talking about schools as young as grade 6 and 7 in the region, allowing the use of AI, the bigger question of AI. And on this, as I like to put it, on this road to extinction, there's actually another signpost that people are very worried about right now, if I can call it a signpost, another issue that I want to mention. We'll do that right after the break here. This is 570 News Radio.
Even in my day-to-day life, I'm very careful about how I use AI and that I make sure that I'm doing it in a way that it's not taking away too many of my own facilities, because, I've seen my ability to read a map and, find my way around new cities has disappeared as I've used Google Maps. And I don't want to see the same thing happen to my critical thinking skills. And I don't want to see that happen to my children's critical thinking skills.
Nailed it there, Professor. Critical thinking. That's right. A sorry lack of critical thinking in our lives since we all became connected and all that. And now AI is going to rob us of our ability to think for ourselves in a critical fashion. And there is, I don't have it in front of me, but I did a podcast some time ago about critical thinking and what's required. There's just some basic steps that you can teach yourself to think critically about. And that sounds a little bit negative. It's not what I mean, of course, to be critical of everything, but just critical thinking. It's like, why is that real? What does that person say? What is their information? What is their background? How can I verify that? Just to be in that mindset of critical thinking and all the time. And if AI is just going to hand you an answer, then you're not going to think, and it's a use it or lose it situation. The more you use critical thinking, the better you are at it. If you don't use it at all, then it just goes away, and you just accept whatever you have. So that was Professor, by the way, our guest, Michael Pavlin, AI professor at Wilfrid Laurier, talking about the issue of AI in schools. And I liked what the professor said about guidelines as opposed to guardrails. And I didn't get the distinction at first, but now I do. And he does recommend guidelines, and he's not against the use of AI in schools. And because my point at the beginning of our chat was they're using it anyway. It's there. Why not allow it? And it's not like, and believe me, this is not the conversation of, well, if kids are smoking pot, we should just allow them to smoke pot in school then because they're doing it anyway. No, there's certain, but when it's, I always say banning cell phones in class. Why don't you teach a class called cell phones? Banning use of social media in school times. Why? Well, yes, I agree with that, but why don't you also teach a class called social media? Why don't you teach a class called AI, which I believe the professor said, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I believe he said he's not into bans either. Banning it is never the answer. So if we can introduce it with guardrails and kind of teach it rather than be afraid of it, can we actually have a more positive result out of AI? Because people always say too, and we're going to talk about this after 10:30, oddly enough, about high school students who through AI have invented something that can help people avoid hospital delirium when they're waiting in hospitals. And medical is one of the things when they talk about AI, medical, legal system, science in general, how AI can just be a boon to these fields. And yet, and I agree with that, yes, it can be a boon, but there's also this danger of what it's going to do to our ability to think for ourselves. So it's a really interesting topic. The other signpost up ahead, by the way, really quickly, is data centers. So there's been data centers since the 40s, really, but now with everybody connected and all the social media and self-driving cars and loops around the moon and us wanting to find a recipe for butter chicken, it's so much, everything is data. Everything we put up, we have our little computer or our phone, whatever it is we have, and it can't store everything, so we send it to a cloud. Well, a cloud is data. That's a machine somewhere with chips holding information, holding data. And the data centers are large, but now becoming massively larger because of AI, because it's more data. Like if everybody in the world wrote 3 new books every day, how big would a library be? Well, That's what's happening, except it's 10,000 books and gigabytes of data, whatever, right? And so the data centers now that are going into communities are massive, and they are causing noise and nuisance hums, and they use a lot of water for coolant. They have big diesel generators. They have, as backups, they have, they're just massive to the point where people are protesting data centers coming into their community. And like they're a clear and present danger. And that's the other immediate danger now. People are looking at AI. So something to think about, but maybe a more positive spin on AI coming up next here on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
And as my special guest in 1 hour from now, Mike Farwell is going to join us as a guest on his own show, live from you know what? Sorry, I got to check my notes here. The Fruitful in Unity City of Kelowna. I looked up their town slogan for some reason. It's Fruitful in Unity, Kelowna, BC. And this year hosted the Memorial Cup, where the Kitchener Rangers are, and will be playing tomorrow night in Game 1 of the Memorial Cup against the hometown Kelowna Rockets. So that's, as you know, why Mike is there and bringing you all the action tomorrow in that Game 1 and subsequent games, and hopefully all the way to the end and the winning of the Memorial Cup. But Mike Farwell going to join us in an hour's time. Also, before that, at 11 o'clock this morning, we're going to be talking about the Auditor General report, specifically shortages in funding of special education and some critical lack of funding there. We're going to be joined by the MPP for Kitchener Centre, actually deputy of the Ontario Greens as well. Ashlyn Clancy is going to join us at 11 o'clock this morning, just after the news. And we're going to talk about that. So that's coming up on today's show. As always, in the noon hour, our 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, a great open hour for you to talk about whatever you want, whether it be our champion Rangers or, as I mentioned, the last night of Stephen Colbert tonight, or Ebola, or Blair traffic, or just about anything you want to talk about on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour coming up at noon. So we just had a conversation about AI and negative impacts, and here's something positive about AI. Some local high school students are helping seniors with an award-winning AI project, and it's called Synapt IQ. It's very interesting, but I have a lot of questions. Here, joining us, one of the people behind this is Gornor Kaur. Gornor, thank you for joining us.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
How are you? I'm
doing well. How are you?
I'm good. And as I said, I have a lot of questions about this project. It's an AI, maybe you could explain it, that helps prevent hospital-induced delirium in seniors?
Yeah. So what I worked on was a device that allows for continuous monitoring of patients in hospital to prevent a condition called hospital-induced delirium. Hospital-induced delirium is a condition that affects cognitive state, and for hospitalized patients, about 30% of elderly patients will experience it. Unfortunately, 72% of cases are currently going undetected. And what makes it really hard to diagnose is that it's a fluctuating condition, meaning symptoms don't progress linearly. Since symptoms don't progress linearly, you need continuous monitoring. And nurses have a very high patient load and are incredibly overwhelmed, making it hard for them to do that. So I developed a device that is able to continuously monitor patients throughout the day, and it takes into account multiple different things. One thing that it takes into account is it's able to detect emotional states of patients. It's able to detect heart rate and respiratory rate through non-contact cameras, preventing the need for patients to be hooked up to bulky sensors. And it's able to predict delirium before it happens and assess patient risk. And I've integrated a chatbot to be able to talk with patients and converse with patients, providing them company, and run reorientation techniques, which have been shown to reduce delirium risk by up to 50%.
Wow. There's so much there. This sounds amazing. So just quickly on the hospital-induced delirium, this would be described as what, an anxiety, if you will, a high anxiety of being hospitalized for a longer period of time?
So it's a condition that is classified by a few things. Firstly, it affects the cognitive state of the patient. It can also cause disorganized thinking. It can increase inattentiveness within patients, and it fluctuates. It's a fluctuating condition, so it doesn't progress how you would expect most conditions to progress. And it's often due to like post-surgery and also just being stuck in a hospital for a very long time without many interactions with other people and family.
I know just being in an emergency ward for 12 hours started to affect me. I can't imagine, being hospitalized for lengths of time, what this would do. And again, you mentioned this, but it's non-contact. I find that fascinating, that you're not actually hooked up with all little pasty wires and nodes all over your body, right?
Yeah, that was incredibly important to me because when I was talking to nurses and talking to patients, I found that contact sensors often cause patients more discomfort. So it makes them more uncomfortable, and especially during longer stays, patient comfort should be a priority.
Now, dare I ask the dumbest question? If there's no contact, if there's just cameras, I mean, how are you doing this? Is it just a wireless, like Bluetooth thing? How are you how is it making the detections?
So it's based on ambient lighting. In a room, you'll have light, and what happens when your heart beats is that blood flows in and out of your tissue. And when that blood flows, that'll affect the absorption of light because blood will absorb specific colors and wavelengths of light. So when you're doing this non-contact camera-based monitoring, you're looking for the change in absorption of light due to cardiac, like your cardiac beat, like your heartbeat.
You're in high school?
Yeah, I'm in grade 11.
Wow. You're blowing my mind here. This is amazing. Congratulations. So this is award-winning. So this has been looked at now. Obviously, you've done a lot of research, but is it in anywhere? Is it working? Even a prototype somewhere working right now?
So I've built a prototype, which I've tested on myself, and I've tested on data sets, but I'm still currently trying to integrate it within nursing homes and hospitals.
And what is that? That sounds more like a business model thing. How is that going?
It's requiring a lot of effort because entering the healthcare workflow is incredibly difficult, but I've reached out to mentors and other people who are giving me advice on how I can approach it and what path I should take to do so.
I would think even, and you can tell me in your research, even with nurses, if you were to research and then describe to them what you were trying to do, and now you have this prototype, they would say, wow, yes, get me one of those as soon as you can. I would think that they would fall all over themselves to get a hold of something like this.
I think that many nurses and doctors would be really appreciative of this tool, but to be able to enter the healthcare sector, it requires a lot of testing and certification through national organizations. Sure.
Can one device, if you will, monitor one patient, or can you do? Could it handle a ward, for example?
So in a ward, I've found through my preliminary calculations that one device should be able to monitor up to 4 patients.
Wow. And have you been able to, in the testing in the building, and you said you tested it on yourself, so it was in other words, you could see the reactions and changes in your system through the prototype?
Yeah. So, I would run on a treadmill, and I would see changes in my heart rate and respiratory rate. I would, record my face and see changes in my emotional detection that were pretty accurate. On a data set, I received a 98% accuracy in detecting microexpressions on patients' faces. And in heart rate and heart rate detection, I had less than a 2.8 beats per minute error. So that's how I tested it.
I'm quite interested in the and I'm gonna butcher this, pardon me, but the changes in tone as in the ambient lighting, the subtle changes you're able to detect in refraction of light.
Yeah. So one, like, is this relevant to like the heart rate detection?
Right.
Yeah, so one thing that's of concern with current like camera-based models is that ambient lighting, so just the general light, has a big effect on cardiac measurements. So if a room is darker, if a room is brighter, or if the lighting is fluctuating, so if you're in an area where the lights aren't as strong, that can all cause bias in the model's readings. And that's because current cardiac models used for like this field are actually mathematically unstable and mathematically incomplete. I figured that out, and I added a new term to these mathematical models to be able to remove this instability.
Wow. And let me ask again, you're in high school?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm being an idiot here because all this accomplished by grade 11, I'm in awe of you. So it's totally amazing. So you're now getting advice, and you're kind of in next steps of actually how to be able to integrate this into the medical system, into the healthcare system, and get a prototype hopefully built into a number of them, right?
Yeah. Those are my goals.
Well, very, very interesting and just mind-blowing and innovative and great. And I wish you all the success, Gurner. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Gurner Kawar is a high school student, right? Now, is it just me, or you're listening to this and going, high school, okay. It's just just such a wonderful thought when really what we do mostly about high school students is criticize them. And why couldn't they be more like we were when we were, whatever, I know. But I'm just saying all that stuff, to hear somebody who's in high school still thinking beyond and beyond and beyond for something like this, the hospital-induced delirium, which is a phrase I didn't really hear ever before until I saw this story, hospital-induced delirium. And I had someone very close to me in hospital surgery. Hospital stay was, a week, 10 days. I'm trying to think now. A long time. And I never really thought of the hospital-induced delirium that they would be in, or just basically, as you and I might think about it, how to get through a hospital stay. As much as people try to visit and you have a laptop and you have things to do and nurses come through, whatever, but it's just you in a hospital, and to detect this delirium, which can negatively affect your overall health with a machine that you don't even have to be connected to. Well, wow, I'm just in a wow mode right now over Gurner Kawar and this invention. And I certainly hope it goes well, and some angel investor goes, yeah, we're building those. Let's go. Let's get all the testing going and get it into the healthcare system ASAP. This is Larry Fedoruk from Mike Farwell. More in a moment on 570 News Radio.
It's able to detect heart rate and respiratory rate through non-contact cameras, preventing the need for patients to be hooked up to bulky sensors. And it's able to predict delirium before it happens and assess patient risk. And I've integrated a chatbot to be able to talk with patients, providing them company, and run reorientation techniques, which have been shown to reduce delirium risk by up to 50%.
And that is a grade 11 high school student in the region who has come up with this device called the Synapt IQ, which helps detect hospital-induced delirium in patients, and it's non-contact. So it's cameras, basically. Well, it's not basic at all, is it? But it's a camera, sensors that are able to, without you being hooked up to stuff in the hospital, because we all know we're hooked up to enough stuff in a hospital when we have to stay, that can detect changes in all kinds of things, temperature, blood pressure, like all these kinds of things. Just an amazing, award-winning piece of AI, if you will. And because we've been talking about AI this hour, and one of the fields they think AI is going to be a boon to mankind, not the extinction of mankind, is the medical field. And there's a great example of it there through a device like this, which is amazing. If you have, and the device can, as they mentioned later on in the interview, can probably work on 4 different patients at once. So that's usually, I think today that's still called a ward, right? A room with 4 patients. So you could have one of those in there, and then at the nurse's station, being able to detect this in ahead of time, the onset of the delirium ahead of time. I'm just fascinated. I'm just flabbergasted by this, I guess. I understand enough of it just to understand how little I understand. You know what I mean? Right? It's genius, but I don't quite. Even when she was saying that it's like, well, there's this problem with previous camera monitors and this, but I mathematically figured out that, and I changed and I'm like, oh, okay, you did that. Okay, good. Yeah, I was thinking that. I was hoping somebody was going to do that. Just amazing. Congratulations on that. High school student. Great future. I'm hoping. Just reminded me, I don't know if you've heard of this stat. I just did a podcast on it called, I have a weekly podcast, which I'm allowed to plug once. Actually, there's no rule. They don't give me a rule, but I'm kidding. I tried to limit it to once. I do a podcast weekly called Later That Same Life. It's on every podcast platform, and I have a YouTube channel. And my latest podcast was on summer jobs. And I thought if it comes up, I would talk about it on the show as I was filling in for Mike Farwell here in these days. And it just came to mind when I was talking to this high school student about what they're up to as far as in high school, because I think a summer job in college or post-secondary is different than a high school summer job, because it's you're this close into entering the workforce at post-secondary, and you're actually, in a lot of cases, trying to put yourself through school, whereas the high school summer job is really, maybe you're saving for something, or maybe you're putting your money towards university. Maybe you are, but basically high school summer jobs are to get some of your own money, and it's your parents telling you that you just can't hang around and do nothing all summer, even though you're saying, oh yeah, I could just watch me. I could do that. But right, you can't. So at a certain point, the high school summer job. When we were young, when we were teens, 60% of us had a summer job. 60%. Today, it's under 30%. So cut in half. So why aren't teens, high schoolers that age, because I think the legal job age is 14, is it not? A lot of kids get jobs, and they mow lawns and deliver papers and babysit and do all those old traditional things before 14. But at 14, you can actually go apply and work at the fast food place or whatever. You can't do arc welding, but you can, even if you know how, but you can get all kinds of jobs at 14 legally. I believe that is the legal age. So anyway, why aren't the kids doing summer jobs anymore? Why aren't they doing summer jobs? And there's a list of factors, but the 2 big ones are AI. So there you go. That's the tie-in. AI is because a lot of the jobs that high schoolers would get, summer jobs, and this includes part-time weekends after school. Sometimes those jobs can become full-time during the summer and you have a summer job. A lot of those jobs are entry-level basic positions. And a lot of those kinds of jobs are being replaced by robotics and AI in general. So there's that. One of the biggest reasons, though, believe it or not, is the aging population. We all know that. The population, we be aging. We're getting older. And there's not only more of us available to work, but more of us needing to work because everything costs so much and we need to supplement a retirement income if we have one. So those jobs that went to high schoolers more and more are going to seniors. And you see it at the grocery store, at the McDonald's, at the wherever. You see more and more seniors in these what might be called entry-level or basic positions at a place of work, a place of employment. And right or wrongly, an employer is looking at that and saying, well, I can get a high school kid who can only work certain hours and needs time off and exams, and it's their first job and they don't know what they're doing. Or I can hire a senior who already knows what it's like to go to a job every day, and they'll do anything, anytime. They'll work all the time. So who do I choose? So that's a stat, though, isn't it? Less and less of us are having, as teens, less summer jobs out there. This is 570 News Radio. More in a moment.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
Always thrilled to be here, filling in for Mike Farwell. Happy to be asked, happy to be on, especially under the circumstances this time that Mike is fulfilling duties with the Kitchener Rangers as the voice of the Rangers because they are in the Memorial Cup. As I said earlier, that's not news to anyone, but it's worth repeating. Memorial Cup, here we are. And it begins tomorrow. And Mike Farwell is going to join us at 11:30 from Kelowna, British Columbia. This is the British Columbia, by the way, as opposed to all the other Columbias that are out there. So we'll hear from Mike from Kelowna at 11:30. And we're going to talk a little bit about Rangers hockey and the Memorial Cup and whatever else. So that's coming up. And don't forget, as always, in the noon hour, it's the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour where we open it up to you. What would you like to talk about, whether it's the Rangers or anything else in our world or worlds beyond that's on your mind today on a Thursday that you can talk about, and you want to share it in the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. Open up the phones there in that noon hour for lunch, okay? So that's all coming up on the program. Right now on the show, you may have heard the Auditor General report in the last few days, specifically saying, well, a lot of things, but special education funding in Ontario is falling short of the needs, and the needs are growing, which is one of the reasons it is falling short, because same amount of money, greater need. That means there's a shortage. Here to talk about this, our MPP for Kitchener Centre, also Greens deputy leader in Ontario, and former school social worker, Ashlyn Clancy is joining us. Good morning, Ashlyn. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Well, this Auditor General report, it talked about general shortages, I think, as far as education, but specifically special needs. Talk about that, that area that has a critical lack of funding right now.
For sure. So our education workers have been, speaking up for years now. I think since COVID, the needs, the way we raise our kids and the context they're living in has really shifted. And so we see kids that are coming to school with less tools in their toolbox, with big feelings. And so it's really important that our ministry, our education system is funded to kind of meet kids where they're at so that every kid has access to what they need to learn. And that's what I'm hearing from families now as MPP, is that more and more families are feeling like the schools just don't have enough caring adults in the building, and they're not funded that way so that the kids have what they need so that they can thrive.
When we talk about shortages, is that the main area? Is people, staff, assistants, people, bodies?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like the funding, like the ministry will say it's historic funding, but we know the quote is that $6.3 billion is short since this government came to office. And just because they haven't kept up with inflation. So you can add more bucks every year, but if you're not keeping up to inflation, it doesn't meet the needs. And we do have, like you said, the Auditor General said we have growing needs. For example, we're seeing that they're not filling in sick days for EAs and special education staff. So, boards don't have enough money and enough staff, trained staff, to fill in those needs. So we see EAs, I think it was 1 in 5 sick days aren't filled. Like there's, a real shortage of caring adults in the building that can help kids. So then kids end up being excluded. So we need more EAs and CYCWs and people trained in the college system so that there's just enough bodies. We need to make sure that the funding pays for sick days. Like imagine you're at a hospital and there weren't enough nurses, or you're at a grocery store even and there's not enough staff. Like it's just not going to function well. So we need boards to be funded to make sure there's all the caring adults. But I think there's a lack of real leadership from the government on how to make sure every kid's needs are met, as we have more complicated, mental health issues happening at a younger age, kids with autism not getting help in the community, and so they end up in kindergarten without the tools in their toolbox. We really need the funding model to shift to make sure that we have the caring adults in the building and the training and consistency in special education in particular to make sure every kid has what they need so that they can skip down that hallway and feel really welcome and really like they're thriving and they're learning,
I don't mean to focus on one thing you said there, but you said, imagine going to a hospital and there's not enough staff. Like, imagine. Yes. I think many people have been through that. But back to this particular issue, the growing need. One of the things I've read too, one of the results is if children don't feel they're getting what they need, sometimes they just stop showing up and absenteeism grows.
Yeah, I was an attendance counselor, and we know it's a bit of both, right? So we're hearing from the Autism Coalition that kids are being excluded, or that because again, those staff, I said 1 in 5. It's actually 1 in 5 that are sick EAs, and then 80% of those sick leaves aren't filled. So so we're just not filling in with the caring adults. So let's say your kid needs an EA and they need that extra support in school. If that EA is not filled, which is 80% of those sick days, that kid doesn't get the help that they need. And sometimes kids are either being asked not to come, or they know that they won't get to learn. So some kids are being excluded. But then I know, this government has said, we're going to give a mark for attendance in high school. But if you look at the data, those patterns of absenteeism start in kindergarten and elementary school. Like, we really need those supports in place early on. Like, our little people, they need, they don't need crowded classrooms. I've been hearing from families that their kids are going to kindergarten and there's over 30 kids in that class. Not only is the physical space not built for more than 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, but like 2 adults in the room, the kids aren't getting what they need, and they really need more help. So it's a bit of both. We need to make sure the staff is there so that every kid can come to school and have the supports, but we need to be addressing absenteeism at a really young age, whether it's poverty or special education needs that aren't being met or family supports. Let's get that help when we need it so that, we can bounce back and have a healthy generation.
You mentioned autism a couple of times. Is that the big area of special need because of, neurodivergent or whatever, that we're diagnosing this more, we're understanding it more, so there's more of kids with special needs? Is that the big area, or is it just part of it?
I think there's many factors happening. Like I do think, when we come, I hear from families with little peanuts with autism. Sometimes they get an early diagnosis. We know more kids are waiting longer to get assessments in school if they don't have the thousands to do it in the private sector. But then they're sitting on wait lists for autism funding for years, right? So then that kid's in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, without the supports in the community. So we're noticing that. But again, with like social media, like I'm putting forth some legislation in the coming weeks that we need to do better to help our kids have protections when they're online. So many kids are spending at least 15 to 20 hours online, it's affecting their mental health. So we see both. We see, kids with special needs that aren't getting the help in a timely manner. And then we see kids with mental health issues, and that's affecting their ability to thrive in school. So all of it lands on the school, kind of like the emergency room for hospitals. And we really need the funding model in the government to kind of meet the moment. Like, they're not even paying their bills when it comes to CPP, EA, and there's a whole bunch of bills they're just not paying, and it comes from other places, and they're not meeting the moment when it comes to these needs that kids have now that are changing over time.
I think Paul Calandro made a statement. I don't know if you heard it, but maybe you could react to it. He said something to the effect of more funding is not always the answer.
For sure. The government's doing a good job at building schools, so I got to give them credit when credit's due. They're getting a lot of infrastructure built, but I think when you look at, let's say for CPP, imagine they're just like, no, we're not going to pay for CPP. What are we going to do? Have a bake sale to pay for CPP? Like, the school boards don't get to choose if they pay for CPP. So there's some serious funding gaps, whether it's transportation, maintenance of administrative buildings. There's some buckets that are just not even adequate. But then we do need to look at the funding formula when it comes to sick days, like EAs. We need to make sure if an EA is sick that we fill in their sick days and it doesn't put a school board into debt. So I appreciate that it's not just about funding, and that's where protections when it comes to social media could go a long way. When it comes to tailoring supports in the community, there's lots of things we could do to quote unquote innovate. But I do think that there's certain areas where they're just not paying the bill. Filling in sick days. We just need staff. We need a strategy with special education to make sure that kids have what they need, that families know that their kids' needs are being met, that every kid has access to what they need to thrive in schools, and that the government is meeting the moment, because I don't think they really aren't right now. As someone who has been in schools, as close as 2 years ago, I know that the situation has changed. Staff are burnt out, and it's meaning kids' needs aren't always being met.
Well, I think down the road too, and I've talked about this with other people about, for EAs, for example, if it doesn't seem like it's a solid job with benefits, nobody's going to aspire to it. And we're going to start to have fewer people in those positions available even. Yeah,
no, 100%. People aren't signing up for the college programs. But we saw this with nurses, and the government made a strategy to try to encourage more people to be trained in that. We need something similar here. They've kind of tried to adjust things for teachers, but I think we need to look at our EAs and that. Remember when the province almost shut down because they were using the notwithstanding clause to not have fair negotiations with education workers, like the EA staff, and the whole economy was going to shut down because to use the notwithstanding clause against the lowest paid education worker just seemed so wrong. And so that attitude has to change. We have to start valuing all the education workers to make sure they have what they need, whether it's training, whether it's adequate pay and benefits, whether it's filling in sick days so that people aren't getting spread too thin. We need to really look at who is taking care of our kids and making sure we're caring for those people, whether it's a teacher, a CYW, an EA, a social worker, psychologist. We need to make sure that they're paid appropriately and that we have adequate staffing levels at minimum.
I wanted to ask you, because the Auditor General report cited many of the things we talked about, cited to 3 different school boards, none of which were in Kitchener-Waterloo. Would you assess the region as better or just not cited in the report and still room for improvement, or how would you assess that?
Yeah, no, I think locally I think it was 90% of boards were in a deficit position. The funding barriers, with CPP and sick days, those are widespread. If a school board fills all their sick days, they run deficits. That's the reality. They're just not paying the bills. I think the government pays for 4 sick days, and teachers can take up to 11. So if an average of 6, like, we're running into deficits. So I think those funding pinch points are a reality locally. We have aging school infrastructure, the $6.3 billion shortfall, $500 million underspent last year alone. That's across the province. I think our school boards would say they need more support in terms of funding special education. They need to make sure that they're funded for proper staffing levels and sick days and things like that, and because otherwise kids are suffering. And I think anybody who has kids in school recognizes the strain on our system and wants this government to kind of create a funding formula that just pays the bills and meets the moment in terms of what our kids need to thrive.
A little bit out of left field here, Ashlyn, so feel free to pass on this question, but maybe it was because of the airplane or whatever it was, but I have noticed a mounting amount of criticism against the Ford government based on spending and what they spend money on and what they don't spend money on. And yet we're looking at a majority government that was fairly recently elected. So as somebody who sits on the other side of the floor, what do you do? Do you just continue to kind of voice concerns and publicize Auditor General reports or whatever they are? What do we do? Because we can't exactly vote on this right now or in the near future. A part of our job, I work across party lines, I think as somebody who worked in schools recently, I always offer to the government that I'm here to kind of look at solutions. And I'm going to, when it comes to the social media stuff, be putting something forward that's this is what's working in other jurisdictions. So part of it is putting forward the answer and the government picking up on some of those ideas and those solutions. I think our job is also to hold this government accountable. Yes, they won a kind of winter, majority because our electoral system is quite flawed. But I think folks, with the FOI stuff, our job is also to highlight what's going on in government because they're really hiding the truth, right? This block of freedom of information, hiding pretty much every PC MPP's emails, all their staff, all their cell phone, everything they do is now blocked from public scrutiny. And that's really troubling. This obsession with Toronto the Premier has, the concentration of power, a lot of the decision making is really at the top. And the Premier has a really bizarre obsession with Toronto and vanity projects, whether it's building an island, an airport, a tunnel. We see that's kind of adding up. And I think that pushback from the public saying, hey, I pay my tax dollars so that we can have a good public healthcare and public education and infrastructure and housing. Those things are kind of falling behind, and I think the public's getting frustrated. So my job is to bring voice to that, being hey, there is a life outside of Toronto, Waterloo Region wants our fair share, and we want to make sure that the main job of provincial government is done first. And so that's a big part of what we do is putting forward the solutions, the answers, being a voice for my community. I answer to my constituents, not my party leader, and just kind of picking apart that Toronto isn't the be-all, end-all, that it really, the rest of the province is saying, hey, we need investments here too. Sure do. Appreciate your time today. Well said. Thank you, Ashlyn. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you covering this. It's important. We have good journalism, and I thank you, Larry, for shedding light on this important issue. Our kids, our vulnerable kids are so important.
Of course. Ashlyn Clancy, thank you. MPP for Kitchener Centre, also a Greens deputy leader here in Ontario and a former school social worker. Talking about a lot of things there at the end, huh? Maybe we can pick up on those, but also that Auditor General recent report about shortages in education, especially when it comes to special needs. I'm Larry Fedoruk, in for Mike Farwell. Back after a short break on 570 News Radio.
We have to start valuing all the education workers to make sure they have what they need, whether it's training, whether it's adequate pay and benefits, whether it's filling in sick days so that people aren't getting spread too thin. We need to really look at who is taking care of our kids and making sure we're caring for those people, whether it's a teacher, a CYW, an EA, a social worker, psychologist. We need to make sure that they're paid appropriately and that we have adequate staffing levels at minimum.
That was our guest moments ago. I'm Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. That was Ashlyn Clancy, MPP at Kitchener Centre, also Deputy Leader of the Greens here in Ontario, and former school social worker, talking about the Auditor General report, shortages in education funding, especially when it comes to special needs. And then kind of just generally at the end of our chat there, I was curious about somebody in opposition to a majority government here in Ontario, what they do when this snap election that we had really a short time ago that saw another majority Conservative government elected, and now what do you do? Because the backlash is greater than ever, and I don't care if you're a Doug Ford Conservative or if you're a Dofo must go individual. It is frustrating to see some of the deals, in my opinion, misspending, lack of spending in critical areas, health and education being top among them. Because that's basic, right? It's like complain about taxes and government spending and everything, but it's like, can you get these two things, health and education? Can you get these? And yeah, I know it's all important, and housing and inflation, everything else, yes. But I always put, like, if I'm going to talk about less government or whatever, wherever you stand in that regard, when it comes to government, and can you do health and education? Can you do that? Can you put more money that? Some basic rights that we have, proper health care and education for our young people and younger people. Can you get that right? And so what do you do now that we're facing this majority government that doesn't seem to want to spend in those particular areas? And some very serious questions come up as to where money is going. What do you do? I mean, there was somebody published a poll the other day, said Doug Ford's popularity the lowest it's ever been, 27%. And I went, that's still higher than the number of people that voted for him in the last election. You know, that's where we're at. Special guest on the Mike Farwell Show. Next is Mike Farwell in a moment here on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
You know, if I can take you backstage for a moment at a radio talk show behind the microphone, there's a term we use often. It's called a good get, and it refers to a guest that you can get for a topic, like the ultimate guest on a topic. Who can we get for that? Oh, we can get so-and-so. And so, oh, that would be a good get. And we have what I would say is a great get for our next guest here for our topic. And joining me on the Mike Farwell Show is special guest Mike Farwell. Good morning.
Larry, good morning to you. And I thought actually we were going to be talking good get in reverse, because I think it's a great get for us at 570 News Radio to have you here filling in while I'm 4 provinces away doing goodness knows what with goodness knows whom. So thank you for being there, and thank you for having me on my show.
Well, go on. Well, no, seriously, go on. But I'm going to get this out of the way right away. I was talking earlier, and Doug called immediately at 9 o'clock this morning when he knew you were coming on. And I was talking about the Memorial Cup and the format and teams that you don't see during the year, where in the NHL and the playoffs, you play these teams occasionally, you see them, where there's no interleague play. And Doug said, I asked Mike, there was some talk of interleague play between the OHL and the Q years ago. Is that right? Do you remember anything like that?
That is absolutely right. And get used to Doug. He's like a co-host on the show, usually right around 9:05. We love him. And to that end, I will just add, because obviously our friends back home are very anxious for Memorial Cup and Kitchener Rangers coverage. And since Josh Piercy and I are here in Kelowna with the team, we'll be bringing you coverage all through the afternoon news, the morning news here on the show with you, Larry. So anything you want to know about what's going on here in Kelowna with our Kitchener Rangers and our coverage of the Memorial Cup, because we'll broadcast every Rangers game, this is the place for it. To the specific question, Larry, not even a few years ago, but for the upcoming season, there is talk about the Kitchener Rangers playing what you would call some crossover games with another league, that league being the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League. We've seen this happen recently between teams that are geographically close to one another. So Ottawa has played Gatineau because, as you would know, those are 15, 20 minutes away as geographic centers, but Ottawa's in the OHL, Gatineau in the Quebec League. But they have crossed over and played a 2-game mini series against each other, one in the other's arena. And last year, the Ontario Hockey League added Sudbury to that to play against Rouyn-Noranda. They met kind of in the middle and played in Timmins for a couple of games, and those games can't counted in the regular season standings. We also have confirmed for next season, it'll be a preseason, mind you, but still, the London Knights are going to fly all the way out to near where we are right now in Kelowna and play some exhibition games against the Victoria Royals. So an opportunity during the preseason for the London Knights players. And then as for the Kitchener Rangers, there was some talk, and I think it will come to fruition. We will likely see a couple of regular season games next year between the Kitchener Rangers, and I believe they had narrowed it down to the Moncton Wildcats and Halifax Mooseheads, I think, or maybe just Moncton. Either way, the Rangers are likely, not confirmed yet, but we're probably 80 to 85% there, that the Rangers will play a couple of games against a Quebec team next season during the regular season.
My birth town is Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and PA was in the finals against Everett, who is now in the Memorial Cup. And I was thinking of the distance of travel there between an Everett, Washington, and a Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. You know, so it seems maybe in the WHL, I don't know, travel distances seem greater than even the miles you put on some years in the OHL.
I have to be honest, Larry, I do complain from time to time about the travel in the Ontario Hockey League, and my friends from both of the other leagues will frequently send me little reminders that I have absolutely nothing to complain about. The longest trip we make is the trip up to the Soo. It's about 8 hours. Is that long? Yes, but we only have to do it twice. Most of our travel from Kitchener, because we are so central, and the Ontario Hockey League really is based around that Southern Ontario corridor. Most of our travel is about 2 hours away from Kitchener. So it's not all that tough at all. In fact, I was chatting with the play-by-play voice of the Kelowna Rockets as we get ready for this tournament, and he was talking about the late, great Don Cameron, who for more than 50 years called Kitchener Rangers games and broadcast more than 4,000 games in total. And Regan was tantamount, Regan Bartel, the play-by-play voice in Kelowna, was tantamount to sacrilege back home for us when he said, you know, that's a great accomplishment, but we've got a guy here in the WHL that has done more than 3,000 games. And when you consider the amount of travel, and it's not unfair. Like we rightfully love Don and everything that he did. And listen, if you're leaving home to go to work 4,000 times plus to call hockey games, it's a heck of an accomplishment, to say the very least, to say nothing of Don's talent. But when it comes to the Ontario League, we have it very, very easy for travel, certainly in Kitchener. And just to bring that point full circle, Everett, which is the WHL champion, is about 6 hours away from Kelowna. And unlike Chicoutimi and unlike Kitchener, who flew into Kelowna yesterday, the Everett Silvertips are bringing their bus, and they're going to do a 5 to 6 hour bus ride to get here for the Memorial Cup.
Now, here you are now on the big road trip of the year, all the way across, you said 4 provinces, to British Columbia, Kelowna, the beautiful city, the wine country, the orchards, the fruit, all a beautiful place. Tomorrow night, it's game 1, the Battle of the KRs. And Kelowna, a host city, but they also made the playoffs this year. It's, as a host city, you can't say, well, host city will take them for granted. I guess you can't do that.
No, you can't. And I think Kelowna is going to use that to their advantage because, in fairness, the Rockets did get eliminated in the second round of the WHL playoffs. So while they made the playoffs, they didn't go very far. They lost in 5 games in the second round. So they have not played a meaningful game of hockey in 35 days as of today. It'll be 36 when they take the ice against the Kitchener Rangers tomorrow. And something us as Rangers fans like to remind the Canadian Hockey League, the Kitchener Rangers were the last host team to win their league championship on the way to playing in the Memorial Cup. Back in 2008, The Rangers were Ontario Hockey League champions when they hosted the Memorial Cup. And no team since then in the Ontario League, the Quebec League, or the Western Hockey League has won their league championship on the way to playing in the Memorial Cup. That said, you have the whole argument now for tomorrow, the Battle of the KRs, which I'm going to steal, by the way, Larry. Very
Cheers.
well done. Kelowna Rockets, Kitchener Rangers. You've got the whole rest versus rust argument, right? A very well-rested Kelowna team. And we know, they made some trades around the trade deadline, and one of their players in particular, who was a star player here in the Western Hockey League, they only got for 5 games of service before he suffered an injury. Well, he's healthy, and he's going to be back tomorrow night. So they get rested, they get healthier. Will they have their game legs, if you will? The Rangers have had a 10-day layoff after winning the OHL championship last Tuesday over Barrie. So I think the Rockets are going to lean into that underdog status because they got eliminated more than a month ago, but you're going to have the home crowd against you, and you're going to have a rested team to play against if you're the Kitchener Rangers tomorrow night.
Kitchener Rangers all the way, have all the confidence. I just, for the sake of discussion in sports, I looked this up. In 43 years of Memorial Cup format, the one that we have now, 11 times the host city has actually gone on to win the Memorial Cup, including one of them being the Kelowna Rockets back in like 04 or something like that. So it's not unheard of. And I'm not saying that because I think they're beware and it's a dangerous team or anything. I'm just like, it's always interesting when you throw in the sports stats,
And you're absolutely right. And the stats tell us a whole bunch of different things, some of which I'm almost too superstitious to mention. But you mentioned Kelowna as a host team winning in 2004. The Guelph Storm were the OHL representative that year, and they didn't win a single game at that tournament. But that 04 championship was 1 year after the Kitchener Rangers last won the Memorial Cup in 2003. And interestingly, the 2 Memorial Cups the Kitchener Rangers have won were both won in Hull, Quebec, in 03 and back in 1982 as well. So this is the first time the Rangers will be trying, well, not the first time they'll be trying to do it outside of Quebec, but they will try again to win outside of the province of Quebec. The Rangers also are in their 7th Memorial Cup tournament as of this one, which is more than any other team. Chicoutimi 6 times, or was it Kelowna 6? Either way, and Everett's making, I think it was Kelowna 6 times, Chicoutimi 4, and the Everett Silvertips are making their Memorial Cup debut this year. In fact, they only started as a team in the WHL that same year, 03-04, after the Rangers last won the Memorial Cup. And one more stat, the one that makes me the most superstitious to say, but these are just what the stats say, Larry, and you mentioned it. Sports always has these little subplots and statistics to share. This is the 7th Memorial Cup appearance, as I mentioned, for the Kitchener Rangers. In each of their 6 previous Memorial Cup appearances, they have made it to the final. So they've always been in the final game, winning twice, losing 4, but always in the final. And I will just selfishly say, I hope that trend continues this year.
I do as well. What do you make of this? So we play tomorrow night. It's 4 teams, and each team plays each other once. That's the round robin. So we play tomorrow against the host Kelowna Rockets. Then we don't play Saturday, Sunday. Then we play Monday, Tuesday, back to back. What do you make of that? Does that mean anything after you've played a hard season anyway? So, or 2 days off and then back to backs. Couldn't it be better for us somehow?
Perhaps. I don't think so, because I think every team is going to have to do a back-to-back at some point through this, because you all have to play each other once, and it's a very compressed timeline for the tournament. So the only thing that strikes me as a potential negative playing Monday after playing Friday is if you lose that first game, because then you've got a couple of days to dwell on the loss and feel the increased pressure of that next game. Because the challenge with this tournament, you go through a league championship like the Kitchener Rangers just did, you're playing 4 rounds. It's a best of 7 series. Now, the Rangers never got themselves into position where they faced an elimination game. They were very strong, going 16-2 through the playoffs. But it's a different animal when you get here to the Memorial Cup, and that round robin is critically important. And if you lose your first game, then you're staring down the necessity almost of winning the next 2 to finish the round robin at a 2-1 record at worst. And if you don't do that, and heaven forbid you end up in a tiebreaker game, what the schedule could look like for the Kitchener Rangers is Friday, Monday, Tuesday, a tiebreaker Thursday, a semifinal Friday, and a final on Sunday for a total of 6. You want to avoid that at all costs. So really getting off to a good start and winning that opening game is a pretty big deal.
And in this format too, I had to be refreshed on this, but it's 2 points for an overtime or shootout win and 1 point for an overtime or shootout loss. So it's the point system is going to be interesting to see. But I mean, really, it's the goal is win the game, I guess, is really what it comes down to.
It absolutely is. And again, getting off on the right foot is a big part of this round robin format. Hopefully, if you can go 3-0, if you beat every other team, you're going to get a free pass right into the final game on Sunday the 31st, and you only have to play 4 times. And again, if you're looking at the Rangers' schedule, that could mean Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and then 5 days off before you play again on Sunday. That's a lot to ask in a tournament like this with the caliber of teams that the Rangers will be facing, but that's the opportunity that exists for a team that does well in the round robin.
So, and for people who haven't been following precisely, and I'm sure every Ranger fan is, but Kelowna tomorrow, I think Monday is Everett, the WHL champions.
That's correct. Yeah.
And then after that, it's Chicoutimi on Tuesday. So that's kind of the order of what we can expect.
It is. And if you're keeping tabs on the weekly CHL rankings that come out through the entire season, the Everett Silvertips were consistently ranked right at the top as the top team in all of Canada. Chicoutimi hanging around number 3 or so. And then our Rangers, we might have gotten as high as number 4 at some point, but Everett and Chicoutimi, for what it's worth in those weekly rankings, were consistently ranked ahead of the Rangers in the weekly top 10. So very good teams. That's why you go through so much to get here. You have to be a good team to make it to this tournament. And then you see how your best matches up with the best from the other teams.
I was saying earlier in sports, to be in the postseason and to go for the championship, so much has to go right. I mean, every team's got skills and good coaching and speed and power and all. If every team has that, and some may have a slight edge in some of these categories, but then things have to go right. It's amazing how many things have to go right for you to actually hoist the cup at the end of it. So there's that factor too, Yeah,
that is absolutely a truism. And when we got to the OHL championship, as an example, with the Barrie Colts, they were absent one of their very best players, arguably their very best, who was out with an injury and didn't play a single game. The Colts also lost another player, one of their top 6 forwards, in the first game when he suffered a freak injury in that first game against the Kitchener Rangers. So they were a little depleted health-wise. But I also look at it from the other side, Larry, and say, yes, while those things are going right, the Kitchener Rangers earned those opportunities for themselves, or those breaks for themselves, if you will, by the way they've kept themselves conditioned all season long, the things they do in between games to be ready for the next game, the rest when it's available, and the fact that Kitchener was very efficient going through these playoffs, 2 sweeps and 2 5-game series. So you're sitting there with rest in between each playoff series, and you earned that by how well you played. So I try to look at that aspect of it as well, but there's no question you're going to have, you're going to need talent to get this far, obviously, in the Canadian Hockey League through the season, and you will have to have some breaks along the way.
And what does Mike Farwell do in between games and prepare for games and stuff when you're in Kelowna now for days and days?
Yeah, this is a brand new experience. The last Memorial Cup I covered was the one that we hosted back in 2008, and that was just like going to any other Friday night hockey game at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. I have visited and attended as a media member, but not covering officially, several others since. But this one kind of came up on me fast, Larry. I remember thinking after the trade deadline, when the Rangers made the moves that they did, that hey, this team's got a shot, and wouldn't it be a great time to be successful, because the Memorial Cup's being held out in Kelowna in the spring. Like, who wouldn't want to be here where I am now at this time of year? But I'll tell you what, having been to these tournaments before, this is an event. It's a spectacle, and the town is absolutely buzzing with anticipation for the games to get underway tomorrow. So my day today, for example, is going to be spent getting down to the rink for the first time. Yesterday we flew in, got the accommodations and settled in here at the hotel. And then today it'll be getting down to the rink for the first time, getting the lay of the land, knowing where we're going to be able to get the stories that we need from a media perspective. The Rangers will have a practice that I'd like to take in. The trophies will all be brought in. There's a championship trophy parade that really launches this tournament. So a lot of events are happening. And then, of course, once you get into the heart of Kelowna, down by Prospera Place Arena, you're going to see all of these ancillary activities that are happening. So I'm going to be drinking that through a fire hose today so that when tomorrow night arrives, I've got that under control and we're ready to broadcast a good hockey game for you.
Thank you, Mike Farwell, for making time for the Mike Farwell Show and keeping us, everybody's already excited, but I was just going to say keeping us excited about this Memorial Cup and the Kitchener Rangers. And we'll talk soon again. Thank you, Mike.
I share in that excitement, Larry. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm here all week, and that's not a stand-up comedy joke. And folks, keep it tuned to 570 News Radio for all of your Memorial Cup coverage.
You bet. Mike Farwell. I'm Larry Fedoruk in on the Mike Farwell Show. Talking to Mike Farwell. What a time. 570 News Radio. Back in a moment.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust.
Welcome to the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. What would you like to talk about? You heard the phone numbers. I'm going to repeat them anyway, even though hopefully they are programmed into your smartphone already. 519-570-2545, 1-800-570-5715, star 570. How to get a hold of the program here during the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. Do you want to talk about the Kitchener Rangers, the OHL champion Kitchener Rangers, and the Memorial Cup, and the chances and the games and the format and the what have yous of that? Absolutely. Love to talk about that. Just had a great chat with Mike Farwell about that. And funny, he mentioned the rankings of the teams, which are Kitchener, Chicoutimi, and Everett, which is in Washington, and Everett being ranked one of the top teams in the CHL this year, Chicoutimi around number 3 or 4, and then Kitchener ranked as high as 4 at some point. Kelowna, the host team, not really ranked in that sense. So, who cares? Who cares about the rankings? It's anybody's game at this level. And often those, playoff after playoff, especially in hockey, it seems, the high-ranked, best season, can't-miss teams don't seem to win the championships as often as somebody who's just at the right time, working on all cylinders at the right time during the playoff games, right? So I like our chances, is what I'm saying. So there's that. What else? There's Colbert ending tonight. I don't know if that's a concern of anybody or just sort of a passing interest, which is what I have in it. I have a bigger interest in what's happening in America and other places around the world, and what I sometimes feel threatened by in Canada, and especially in Ontario, with Doug Ford ending freedom of information, basically, which is an attack on the press and journalism, in my opinion. So I have this greater concern about freedom of speech in a democracy than I do one particular person and one particular show, being Stephen Colbert and The Late Show. Although, I'm a fan of Colbert. Just general in entertainment, I think he's a bright, clever guy. And everybody's saying, you're not going to see the last of Stephen Colbert. And I'm like, yeah, I hope not. CNN, which it's not my go-to news channel. I watch a lot of Canadian news channels, but I do watch CNN a bit. And their variety of programming that is borderline news is increasing. And so, for example, they have a show called a short documentary series, 4 or 5 episodes, called American on Purpose with Craig Ferguson. And so what I'm saying is they go outside the box of just regular news shows. So I would love to see Colbert in one of those. I think he'd be great on a CNN or something like that, or just another show. Or, hey, if you're Colbert, you've been making millions of dollars each year for 11 years, and you're in your 60s. You might kind of say, I'm not in a hurry to do anything right now. I'll just do nothing. I'll travel. I'll do something. I can't see him being happy at that for a long period of time, but he may, in fact, and I would say, yeah, that's good. And it's interesting, as I said earlier, people say, you're going to watch Colbert tonight. And I'm like, yeah. And then I realize what I mean is I'll watch the clips tomorrow morning. I don't know that I can, other than, like, it's interesting for me because a radio show or a podcast, I can sit there and be happy to listen all the way through. A movie, yes. An episodic television show, yes. A variety show, I'll watch the clips tomorrow. I don't know that I want to sit there from 11:30 to 12:30 and watch a show. I think those days are gone for me and many people. And it's interesting, you say, well, Colbert, the audience for late night, going back, Carson, Leno, even the early days of Letterman, Good Night, 6 million, 8 million if they have special themes or guests going or what have you. And these days, a good Kimmel or a Fallon or a Colbert is 2 million audience, but then you look around and you go, Colbert, that clip where he had the guy and he did the thing, 12 million views on YouTube. And you're like, well, then how do you make money? Well, interestingly, the YouTube channel that is Colbert, and I don't know that they have Instagram and TikTok and all those. I imagine they do as well. But the millions of views on social, those make money. And that's already worked into the financial plan of the show. So, yeah, I'm sure they would love more than 2 million people in a night. I'm sure they'd love to be like the old days of 6, 7, 8 million people, which Jimmy Kimmel got when he came back after his suspension, right? And Colbert got some of those numbers when he was canceled, and then the first few nights when he was talking about it, everybody's. But so I'm sure they'd love to have more of an audience of traditional television, linear television. But at the same time, they're hoping that 12 million people are going to watch the clip of Tom Hanks on YouTube and Stephen Colbert and 12 million hits, because that's worked into their financial model, because that too generates revenue for them. So it's just different, right? The way we watch TV, and it's not even, I don't even know. I often say this. I don't even know what TV is anymore. What's TV? What is TV? I've been saying that for years. They're finally using my line in a commercial somewhere, but I'm saying this for years. What's TV? I'm watching this video on my phone. I'm watching a whole half-hour show on my phone. I'm watching it on my desktop or my laptop, or I also have a TV that I sit in front of in the living room sometimes and watch a movie or Jeopardy. Is that watching TV and the other one isn't? And I'm watching, TV is movie-like in quality. And I know there's a lot of movie people that say, no, you got to go to a theater and you got to have that experience. And I'm like, why? It wasn't a great experience. Unless I'm trying to watch some 3D massive IMAX Avengers thing and I want this full force of larger than life. I don't. I like movies where people are talking and they say interesting things. These are my movies. I can watch that on anything and so if I'm watching a movie on TV, am I watching TV or am I going to the movies? I don't know. What's TV? It's screen time, basically. So what are your thoughts on Colbert? What do you think about this? Oh, also earlier I mentioned, and we were actually, if you are a regular listener and you noticed of the Mike Farwell show, Thursdays at 11:30, we usually do the flip side. And because of the bigness of the Rangers' accomplishment this year, we had Mike on instead talk about the Rangers and tomorrow night's first game in the Memorial Cup. So we didn't do the flip side, but I mentioned this earlier, just a suggestion, but it's your call, whatever you want to talk about on this 12 o'clock talkback hour, is summer jobs. Do you remember your best summer job or your worst summer? Do you have summer jobs? Because here's the stat that blew my mind. That's only a minor exaggeration, because I really was shocked at this statistic that decades ago, when we were young, when we were teens and in high school, 60% of us ended up with summer jobs. And today that number is less than 30. And there are 5 main reasons for that, 2 big ones and 3 others. But so what we learned, or did you learn anything at a summer job, or did you learn, like a couple of things I learned on a summer job was, I don't want to be doing this the rest of my life. Like, I'm happy to have money as a high school kid working at the car wash, but I don't want to be here, with all respect, when I'm 60. So I learned what not to do. I also learned drudgery. Going to a job every day, all day, was different than having to go to school every day, all day. And it wasn't even all day. You were out by 3:30. This 9 to 5 job thing, it's like by the time you got home and had something to eat and put your feet up, it was time to go to bed because you had to go to a job tomorrow. Like, you learn that pretty quick. Is that what summer jobs teach you? I'm like, yes, they do. They do. But I think also growth and self-confidence and just maybe even the ways of the world. And just life skills that you could never learn in a classroom, no matter how hard they tried to teach them in school. There are things you learned at a summer job that you couldn't get anywhere else. And if less and less kids are not having summer jobs, where do they learn those particular skills? Where do they get those skills? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm asking. And are those skills, to me, sound important enough that they should be able to get those skills elsewhere if they're not getting them on summer jobs. So there's something else that you can talk about if you want to share your favorite summer jobs and worst summer jobs. Actually, I just thought of my worst. If we have time next segment, I will share, in some ways, maybe my best, because I end up doing nothing. In some ways, my worst summer job, because I ended up doing nothing. But I will share. I shared it on a podcast recently, and it's always a danger when you make yourself laugh. But I was making myself laugh with this, in the memories of my summer job that was the complete and utter failure, where my dad wouldn't talk to me for most of the summer. But anyway, share that. The numbers once again for the 12 o'clock talkback hour: 519-570-2545, 1-800-570-5715, star 570. Back with more in a moment. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell, 12 o'clock talkback hour. Thanks for calling this show. Thanks for holding. We'll get to you. Here's Grant. Grant, go ahead. You're on the 12 o'clock talkback hour.
Well, I thought maybe you left the country for good.
Where would I go?
I don't know. Not having it's like not having Mike Farwell around, and makes the show not that interesting. But anyways, the Rangers, yeah, I wasn't too sure with Kirsch beginning of the season, but when we played in Ottawa, I think it was 4 months ago, where we were up, and Ottawa was a very good team. We were up 2. We came back with a 2-0 win, and then I thought, well, when Matthew Andonovski came back, I think he's going to get himself into a lot of these penalties. But when we signed up O'Reilly, I think O'Reilly may have spoken to him and said, "No, you've seen how I played. I think you need to clamp down on your nonsense behind the play penalties." And like I said, I think he must have spoken to him. And and we all know that O'Reilly, he's a smart player. He doesn't get very many penalty minutes, and I like to see. Pridwin didn't do a whole lot during the coach series. I like to see him get himself back on track. And we were watching a bit of the Spurs. I'm talking about basketball now. Spurs game, and wow, that number one player there, the player with the number one on his shirt. Holy crap, he's a tall dude, man. Yeah. I think I would like to have him around as a bodyguard. Just have him pick up. He looks like he would have no trouble of picking up an average person and moving them. Yeah. So
Yeah, for sure, Grant. Thanks for the call, man. That's the thing we don't often notice or think about basketball players when the real tall guys, because we used to kind of think of them as the bean poles, and these guys are tall and massive now in basketball. They're tall and big. Like, you want that guy charging, and you want to try and block that guy, even if you're like 6'8" or whatever. It's like, no, I'll just move over and let you have the basket. Thank you. But yeah, and that's a good series. Is it the OK Thunder and Spurs? I think is with SGA. Yeah. Anyway, here's Tom. Tom, go ahead.
Hello.
Hey, Tom, Go ahead.
Okay, hi, Larry. A couple of things. I'll try to be quick here. I don't understand what this passion for Doug Ford extending the last call hours to 4 p.m. or 4 a.m. for the. I don't understand it. Like, last calls at 2 o'clock. Games are going to probably be over by 2. So let's extend it another 2 hours, which means the patrons have another hour to drink what's ever left on their table at the bar so they can leave to go to work or go home. And if this long weekend wasn't enough evidence that humans will be humans, over 8,000 just up in Northern Ontario for charges laid from impaired driving while impaired, and stunt driving and everything else is enough evidence. You just can't do stuff like this. So I don't understand what his passion is or pension is for extending drinking hours for. Doesn't make any sense.
We were laughing about that because the games are here. The games are here. Why do you have to extend the hours? They're not in Finland.
No,
and in fact, when they're in Vancouver, they'll even be earlier here than, it's crazy.
The latest games will be 11 o'clock on 11 o'clock at night, which is out in Vancouver, right? So it'll be like 9 o'clock out there, maybe 10. So it doesn't make any sense to extend the hours. Second one is that I think it's about time we just we cancel all fireworks displays. With this nonsense that's going on over the last years, of people firing off fireworks at people, at law enforcement, at bylaw officers, and everything else, it's a total disrespect to the culture of this country. What we have respected over numerous years for Queen Victoria, Canada Day, Labor Day, and that. It's, if they can't understand and respect the values and traditions, and if they're not being taught that, then it's time to cancel them. And that means Dollywalla, Ramadan, and everything else in that. They all need to be canceled. And if you want to have a fireworks display, put your $500 or $5,000 fee down, money for a fee, and you take on the responsibility and accountability for something that happens at your display then. Because what's gone over this weekend, it doesn't make any sense. A lot of it doesn't. And even if they're younger, the youth and everything else, that, I'm sorry, I'm tired of the excuses either. It's a total disrespect for what we've built this reputation on and values on in this country. So that's really sad. My last point is, where is all this booze that was Doug Ford took off the shelf? Where is it? How much was taken off the shelves? And why is he so afraid to sell it off? Like, is he using it for personal consumption? Is someone using it for personal consumption? Because that to be sold off, like most every province has, and donate that money to some charities. which will go a long way right about now. And that's it, Larry, for me. Thank you.
All right, Mark. I don't know. Was any of that booze on consignment? Like, could they send it back to Jack Daniels or whomever? Or did they just take it off the shelf and it's sitting somewhere until it goes back on the shelf? I don't know. Because it doesn't really, I don't think it has an expiry date. By the way, I love this little booze fact. If you buy a bottle of 40-year-old scotch and you put it away for 40 years and then open it, what do you have? The answer is you have a bottle of 40-year-old scotch. It doesn't, once you bottle booze, it doesn't age. It doesn't, it's still 40 years. The aging is in the barrels, in the oak and in the all that other stuff. But that's fireworks, by the way, I have the answer. Lasers, safer. You ban the fireworks, nobody can do fireworks, but if somebody wants a big display to go to, take their family to at the end of a holiday, lasers. You know when they do the big laser shows for like the Olympic ceremonies and stuff like that? They're fantastic. I imagine cost-wise they'd be similar, and they won't scare your dogs. So that's my answer. Mark, you're going to be next when we return with the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour in a moment.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
You'll hear Mike Farwell next. Tomorrow, Game 1 of the Memorial Cup. Kelowna hosts City Rockets versus the Kitchener Rangers. Go Rangers, go. And I'll be back from Mike Farwell tomorrow as well. Thanks for joining us on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. And thanks for holding Mark. Mark, go ahead. You're on the show.
Hi, Larry. You were talking about movies earlier.
Yes, sir.
I've got a couple questions for you. Have you seen, first of all, have you seen the movie Pulp Fiction?
Yeah, many times.
Yes?
Yes, many times.
Okay. What was in the briefcase at the end of the movie?
I don't believe that's ever revealed or known.
Okay, just asking. And another question, Larry, another movie question. Castaway. Tom Hanks dropped off a package at a farmhouse saying it saved his life. What was in the box?
We don't know that either, right? But aren't the jokes always made about, just a minute. We do know that, don't we?
Okay, I thought you might know, Larry.
So you don't have the answer. You're not quizzing me. You're actually
I don't
want to
have
find
the
out.
answer, no.
Yeah. Oh man. I was just talking about this with someone because it's always bothered me in Castaway, and it bothered other critics too, that Tom Hanks wouldn't open that last package. And symbolically in the movie, he uses that last package. I'll leave it unopened because he opens all the others and he finds the skates and Wilson and all that other stuff. But this was a symbol to him, an inspiration for him to deliver this final package, which actually he returns to sender. He doesn't actually deliver it. He returns it to the sender in Texas.
But you don't have the answer to Pulp Fiction?
Yeah.
Yes, you do?
No, I didn't. Sorry, Mark. I didn't know you were still on the line. I was just kind of going on, but thanks for the call. I was in Pulp Fiction. I don't think it's ever been revealed. And even I think Tarantino has often said that there isn't actually a definition of it. It's just supposed to be this light shining treasure that could be gold or could be diamonds or could be whatever it was, but it was the glow of it, and it was never really defined that I know of. In Castaway, he should have opened that last package because there could have been a GPS tracker in there and an emergency radio beacon device. Like, it could have been anything. Box of granola bars, open the package. But he wanted it to symbolize the fact that he was going to get off this island one day and return the package. And I think there was somewhere mentioned what the package was, but I can't think of it right now, and I'm not going to look it up right now while I'm talking. So if you know, you can tell us. Is this Preston Paul? Hello?
Good afternoon, Larry. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, buddy. I just wondering if you're going to mess with Mike's little setup there, change things around a little bit, take his pens and move them in different places.
I would love to do that. Maybe I can get somebody to do that for me. But I do, when I fill in for Mike, I do the show from home.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, full disclosure.
Okay, right on. So just talking about Stephen Colbert, I loved him on The Daily Show when he first started out with Jon Stewart. Those were the good times when Comedy Central first came around. Did you ever watch those shows at all, Larry?
I did, and there's a brief documentary on CNN right now about that, and they're showing a lot of clips from those days. And I just watched a bunch of those clips recently too, so they were quite good.
Did you hear what Bruce Springsteen said last night before he started his song? He was talking about Colbert's losing his job, getting fired because some president can't take a joke. So I thought that was pretty funny. But it was a good show last night. So you get to see Springsteen. It was pretty good, and I got my VCR set up to tape tonight so I can watch it in case I fall asleep. So it's pretty sad that was going off the air. So, but anyways, have yourself a great day, Larry.
End of an era for sure. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate the call. Thanks, man. Here is Rob. Rob, go ahead.
Hey, Larry, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you, sir. Just chiming in on a couple of past callers. Answer to the gentleman's question about the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. The glow is supposed to be Marcellus Wallace's soul. So I hope that answers this question. That's what it's been mentioned and philosophized over for years. But yeah, Marcellus Wallace, his soul was in the case. That's what they were. That's why they were chasing the case so importantly.
No, that's great. That's great. Okay. I did hear that. Now that you mention it, thank you.
Yeah. As for one of the gentlemen a few calls ago who was disappointed with Andonovski's play this year, I think Matt did exactly what he had to do when he came back. He took a lot less penalties for the remainder of the season than he took when he had the captaincy on his chest. I actually was pleased when he became the captain. I'm a season ticket holder, but was somewhat disappointed with his performance last year before he was scooted off to Ottawa in the NHL because he took too many penalties as far as I was concerned. And I like rough hockey. You've just got to watch if it's your captain who's your enforcer. It doesn't work for me. And I think what he's done this season is he's been there as a leader.
Great. Interesting.
Yeah, he's totally been there as a leader, as a lot of the younger guys that were showing potential already. And then obviously we got the new guys. We got the London guys in. We got number 16 who's been an absolute demon. Edwards has been mine and my buddy's player of the season. But as far as Ando's concerned, I think he's done his job. There was a couple of occasions where I was disappointed with him because he could have actually turned around and smacked somebody and and maybe put a few teams in their places, but he chose not to. So I think he did well. Pridham, apparently, by all accounts, has been playing through an injury. So his gameplay totally changed at the end of the season. He'd scored his goals, but of course everybody wanted, we want to see Jack score. But Jack's played all over the ice the rest of for the whole playoffs. He's been a builder. He's been back. He's been checking. He's been forechecking. No, he hasn't. His shots have been off. Yeah.
But putting in the work. Yeah. Interesting. Rob, thanks for the call, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we're going to do it Friday night, tomorrow, first game, go Rangers. We'll be all at Bobby and Brian's, and we're bringing back the trophy, boys and girls. Thank you.
There you go. Got to do it. We'll do it. Here's Kyle. Kyle, go ahead. You're on the show.
All right. Well, are you a statistic man? Do you like statistics?
Yeah, I do.
All right. Montreal Canadiens. Last time they won the Cup, the average age was 25.8. The current age of this team right now, which is the average age of the current team, is 25.8. Statistically speaking, a team that comes off a 7-game win is going to move on has a higher chance than a team has been sitting which is the Carolina Hurricanes. And I'm a Habs fan. And I know people are going to think that I am biased, which I am. And they're going to win in Game 7. My prediction is a Game 7 overtime winner. It'll be a 4-3 game. I know my friend yesterday I had on, we were talking about it, and I got a gentleman by the name of Sly Nod, played in the Central Hockey League back in the 90s. He predicts it's going to be a 5-2 win for the Canadians in Game 6, and that's going to be an empty netter goal to seal the deal in the third period. And for the Kitchener Rangers, I think they're going to take it, and it's going to be them playing Chicoutimi for the Memorial Cup Finals. And we obviously know that I'm going to go for the Kitchener Rangers because we're going to bring home the cup, just like Robbie said. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to take a whim here. I'm going to say two things here before I let you go, buddy. And that's go Rangers, go, and go Habs, go, because it's worth it to be in the penalty box again, baby. Let's go! Woo! Thanks a lot, Larry. Have a good one, buddy.
All right. Wow. Okay. And hey, and those predictions, wow, so specific. I love it. I love it. Not Habs in 7. It'll be this score with overtime. Well, anyway, I just love that. Love the specificity of his predictions. And obviously the great spirit. Thank you, man. Shane, go ahead. You're on 570 News Radio.
Larry, it's so good to hear your voice, my man. I missed you for so long.
Well, thank you.
I'm sitting out on my front deck right now, enjoying your favorite meal of what you call a chicken tzatziki. I don't remember.
Nice.
I don't know if you remember those conversations or not, back when you were with 610 in St. Catharines. Whatever happened to our buddy Tom? Where's he now?
He's in, last I heard, he was in London in television as the news director.
In television for CTV?
Yes, for Bell Media, because, and this could be updated because I don't really keep track of all that, but he went to be news director of television and radio, and then they shuttered that radio station.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
That station's gone.
I just wanted to catch up with you, Larry. I haven't talked to you in so long. I still watch you on Facebook popping up every once in a while, but just wanted to say hi and keep up the good work, buddy. We missed you.
Well, Shane, you made my day. Thank you, Shane.
All right,
man. Wow. That was nice. Spending many years doing talk radio in Niagara and some in Toronto, all for Bell Media. And yeah, Tom. I haven't thought of Tom for a long time, but we never stayed in touch. I think 2 people that I've stayed in touch with, 2.5, 3, maybe, that I've stayed in touch with since then. So it's great to hear a voice from those days. Shane, what else you want to talk about? Oh, since we have a minute, we do have a minute. Because I said I might, if I had time, I'll tell you about it. We were talking about summer jobs earlier, how half of I'll put this the way I heard it because otherwise it's confusing. Decades ago, 60% of teenagers had summer jobs at some point. Today, it's less than 30%, and to me that's a problem. And I started thinking of good and bad summer jobs. I worked at a car wash one summer that was kind of a part-time Saturday job that turned into a full-time job in the summer. And then I think there was the next summer's my last year of high school, I think, coming up. And I didn't want to do anything because, last year of high school, and then I'm going to go off to university in the working world. And come on, man. But parents said, can't do nothing. And I'm like, I'm going to do nothing. So I didn't look for a job. I didn't do anything. My dad volunteered me for a job because he did. We lived in the city at this point, and the neighbor across the street said, hey, your boy, how old's your boy? And that's like 16. He goes, how would he like to paint my house? I'll buy all the paints and rollers and everything's brushes, and he can take the whole summer to do it, and I'll pay him $300. And I'm like, in the day, 16 years old, $300. I'm rich. I'll never have to work again. $300. Yeah. And plus the house across the street was mostly stucco, and all I had to do was paint the siding. So there's this little part there, and I'm like, and $300? That's ridiculous. I'll be done this in a week, and I'll get $300, and then I'll just live the life of a rich guy for the rest of the summer. Thanks, Dad. So last week of school, word comes out, like, I bought all the paints, all the brushes. They're in the garage. Garage is open. As soon as you want to get started, you go and you start. And I'm like, yeah, man. First Monday of holiday, I'm summer vacation. I'm like, yeah. And I start surveying the job Monday morning. And I'm like, geez, the back of the house is mostly siding. And then there's all the eaves and the eaves troughs all around the house. Those all got to be painted. And then all the windows, wood framing, I got to paint all the wood. That's going to take forever. Geez. And then I got to paint part of the fence on the side of the house. I was like, oh my God, what have I don't want to, and then I realized I hate painting. Why did I agree to this? Because I thought it was going to be easy, sure, but now this is all this paint. Well, got to get started. You said you're going to do it. So I climbed finally the ladder and, stir the paint, climb the ladder, get up there. I paint like 2 feet of eaves. And I'm like, well, I should break for lunch, really. No use knocking myself out here. I go back home across the street for lunch and watch the Flintstones, and I have a nap, and I wake up and then it's like, well, it's too late to go back now. You got the whole summer. Why are you knocking yourself out? Get a fresh start in the morning. Tuesday morning, I decide, I should really just take the day off and get and Wednesday, I think we went swimming. A bunch of us went swimming. Thursday, I was like, well, why don't I have a week of summer vacation and then I'll get started and then I'll knock. And then, so about 10 days go by. And I guess the neighbor's looking at his 2 feet of painted eaves and nothing. No, so he calls my dad. My dad talks to me and he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, get to it. I'm like, yeah, okay. I never went back. Never went back. I don't know how some excuse every day. Oh, I'll start tomorrow. Oh, I wanted to go to the movies, so no use painting all day. I never went back. Another week goes by. My dad's mad at me. He's like, come on, the neighbor's calling me. And this time I just lose it. I break down. I'm like, Dad, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I can't do it. I hate painting. I'm miserable. I don't. And finally, I guess my dad, I don't even know. I never asked my dad later years, but I guess my dad had to go over to the neighbor and go, yeah, my son is basically screw up, and he's not going to paint your house, and you don't owe him any money for the 2 feet of eaves that he painted. So sorry, right? And I guess some high school kid down the street got the job, finished it in like a week and a half, took $300, bought himself a car, like his own car, like a beater, but a car. And I spent the rest of my life living on that block. Well, the rest of the life we had that I lived on that block for a couple of years, avoiding the neighbor. And it's both the best and worst summer job I ever had. Best because I didn't do anything, and worst because I didn't do anything. So much for learning on the summer job. There you go. Summer jobs. Anything else you want to talk about in our remaining minutes? It's the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour here on 570 News Radio. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell today, tomorrow, and next week, barring any unforeseen circumstances. So, Mike is in the beautiful town of Kelowna. Kudos to the town. It is a lovely place that I've been at once in my life as a kid. Had relatives in BC, and once in a while we'd zip out there, and I think we went through Kelowna at some point. Actually, speaking of BC, and this is totally self-serving, and I apologize, but my Aunt Emily, if you saw my post on Facebook, I had an Auntie Maxine pass away recently. The last surviving, and she was like my dad's sister-in-law, so my Auntie Maxine, her husband, my Uncle Roger, was the last surviving sibling on my dad's side of the family. So just you kind of think of it in those terms. It's kind of like the end of an era because of all the aunts and uncles you remember as a kid. Like we have lots of cousins, and it was both sides of my family, my mom and dad, were like lots of kids, big families. So slowly as the siblings pass, my dad passed years and years ago, but my uncle Roger finally passed, and I was like, wow, he was the last sibling, and he was the youngest and the last surviving. And I'm like, from that day, only his wife is left, and she just passed away. And then on my mom's side, my mom was the last surviving sibling, but there was a couple of aunts, sort of the in-laws, if you will, they were aunties of mine. And there's 2 left, and one is in BC, and she's going to be 100 next week. So happy birthday to my Aunt Emily next week. It'll be 100. But anyway, BC, the reason I brought it up is, of course, the beautiful town of Kelowna. And I'll give all the kudos to the town of Kelowna because it is a beautiful spot and beautiful wine country and orchards and just fantastic and lovely weather. Just not to the team. Sorry, Rockets. Nice try. Glad you're hosting. Thanks for being a good host, but it's not your year to win the Memorial Cup. Although they did win it one year as the host city. The host city, out of 43 or 44 times that the Memorial Cup format of this nature, where a host city gets a bye into the tournament, the host cities actually won 11 times in 40 some years. So it can be done, but I just don't think it's going to be done this year. I think the other teams are too strong, especially the Rangers. Go Rangers, go. So on that, as Mike Farwell is there on the team, I will be back tomorrow. For Mike, looking forward to it. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your day. We'll talk soon.